We are starting off today's regular board meeting with the public hearing posted for, well, it was supposed to be 4 o'clock, but it's starting at 4:39. This hearing is required by the Texas Education Agency, Section 39.054C, for a discussion of the Texas Academic Performance Report for 2017-2018. Today's presentation will be held by Carla Stevens, Assistant Superintendent for Research and Accountability. Dr. Latham.
Good evening, President Davila, board members, Superintendent Lathan. This is our annual Texas Performance Academic Report. It's for the 2017-18 school year. This is required by Texas Education Code to have this as a public hearing. The data that is presented in the report is actually by the state, Education Service Center, which we're in Region 4, district and school levels. This presentation is just going to be focusing on the district and the state. In the TAPER report, data are disaggregated by all of the various different student groups. There are a few changes to TAPER this year from last year. The main one I want to focus on is that the state has now come up with an online TAPER portal that I think the public will be interested in seeing, because not only do we have the standard PDF reports, but now there's this online portal that the state will be updating data on a regular basis, that you can do a whole lot more pulling of data by all the different student groups, and as data gets available, the state will be updating it. So I think that's going to be a really good resource for anyone in the public who wants access to data at the state level for all of the districts and campuses. So there's also some additional data that's been included this year based on new accountability data that are available. So I want to talk about the 2017-18 TAPER report, just kind of to give a little bit of background. Here's the district enrollment, and these are comparisons to 2016-17 to 2017-18. So all the data that you're going to be seeing is going to be based on the 17-18 school year, not the current school year. So you can see that in comparison to 2016-17, we did have some small decreases in our total enrollment, African American and Hispanic students. We also had a little bit of increases in our white and 3.6% actually in our Asian enrollment. We had a decrease in our economically disadvantaged and in our Ls. That's compared to the prior year. So you can see in comparison to the state, we have a larger percent of students who are Hispanic and African American. We have a smaller percent that are white, and we have a similar percent that are Asian. When you look at economically disadvantaged status, 75% of the district students in 2017-18 were economically disadvantaged compared to the state in 58.8%. All of this is going to be important when we start looking at the performance data when we're comparing to the state to see how we actually compare or are different from the state so that you can put that performance data into context. And when you look at English language learners, we have 31.5% of our students as Ls, where the state has 18.8%. I'm going to talk a little bit now about the performance data. All of the performance data that we're going to be presenting here are data that have been provided to you at the time that the data were actually released. The state, however, waits until all of the data are available, puts it into the TAPER report, and then we have this public hearing. So none of this data is going to be new to you. It's all data we've already presented, but we just want to make sure that we are getting it all together at the same time in this public hearing. So the exciting part about this is that when the highlights for the STAR is that we increased at all content areas from 2 to 3 percentage points except for the content of science, and we are still a little bit lower than the state, ranging from 5 to 10 percentage points. So when you look at the STAR, English Language Arts, and Reading, this is specifically your Goal 1 data. So this is looking at the data that you've already seen, but this is our Goal 1, making sure that our students are at that meets or above grade level. And you can see that all of our student groups maintained or increased at that meets grade level standard. That's higher than the approaches or just the baseline passing. And you can see that we exceeded or matched the state performance for our white and our special education students. And we were within 2 percentage points of the state for our Hispanic, economically disadvantaged, and English learners at that higher standard of meets grade level in reading. When you look at math, you can see that we increased for all of the groups at that meets grade level standard. And we exceeded or matched the state performance for Hispanic students, white students, economically disadvantaged, and English learners. That's really important for us as a district to show that we are performing as well as or better than the state when you look at the performance of the different student groups. And we were within 2 percentage points for African American and special ed. When you look at writing, that's specifically just grades 4 and 7. We increased for all student groups except for special education students. They only decreased by 1, but they still matched the state performance. So they're performing as well as the state special education students are performing, and our white students are exceeding the state. We were within 2 percentage points for Hispanic, economically disadvantaged, and English learners. And when you look at science, which is going to be grades 5 and 8 plus biology, we had a decrease, as I had said before, for all students we decreased, and we actually decreased for all of the different student groups, though we did exceed the state performance for our white students. And we were within 2 percentage points for special education students. And when you look at social studies, all of our student groups increased except for the white students, even though they continue to outperform the state. And the special education students outperformed the state. So our special ed kids did better at the meets grade level standard in social studies than did the state students. And we were within 2 percentage points for economically disadvantaged. When you look at the all subjects combined, so this would be across all subjects, all students, and separated out by student groups, you can see all of our groups maintained or increased at the meets grade level standard. Again, this is not the approaches. This is at that meets grade level standard, which you have included in your board goal 1. We exceeded the state for our white performance, and we were within 2 percentage points for special education, economically disadvantaged, and our English learners. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about the growth, which is aligned to your goal 3. Now, goal 3 is specifically looking at students who had previously not passed the test to make sure that they're showing growth. This one is looking at all of our students to make sure everybody is showing growth. So you can see on this one, and it aligns to Domain 2, that our students in growth exceeded or matched the state performance in growth for all students, African American, Hispanic, white, economically disadvantaged, and English learners. Our students are showing as much or more growth than the state students did when you're looking at reading. And we were within 2 points of the state, actually 1 point of the state, for special education students. When you look at math growth, we exceeded the state performance for white students, and we were within 2 percentage points for all of the other ones except for special ed. That was 3 points. Bless you. Now I'd like to look at the graduation and the dropout data. This is going to be lagging data. It's for the cohort class of 2017. So that's going to be for students who enrolled as first-time ninth graders 4 years earlier, and then were expected to graduate with the class of 2017. That graduation rate actually increased for the district, even though it still remains lower than the state. But what's exciting is that graduation rate increased for African American students, Hispanic students, special ed, economically disadvantaged, and English learners. However, our dropout rate stayed the same and was still higher than the state. So this graphically looks at that graduation data that I just talked about. The larger part of the bar is going to be the graduation rates. Blue ones are the district, the gold ones are the state, and the smaller parts of the bar are going to be the dropout rates. Now, they don't go up to 100% because the difference between 100% and those bars are going to be students who either received a GED or continued in school. So our English learners actually have a larger percentage of students who either are continuing or getting a GED. But what's exciting here is we have the smallest gap between our district's graduation rate and the state's graduation rate for the African American students. That gap is only 5 percentage points compared to all of the other groups. When you look at the types of diplomas that our graduates are getting, the dark blue area are the students who are getting the higher diplomas, a recommended high school diploma, a distinguished achievement diploma, the foundation high school with endorsements, or the foundation high school with the distinguished level achievement. 87% of our students, actually almost 88% of our students, known as 87.0, are getting those higher diplomas where the state is 85.9%. When you look at the advanced placement and the International Baccalaureate data, we're showing both participation and performance. Our participation rates, while it stayed the same, we are still 10.6 percentage points higher than the state in our participation for AP and IB. And those rates increased for African American and stayed the same for Hispanic students. Even though our performance is lower than the state, we also are showing some increase. So this is the participation rate. You can see this is also lagging data. This is 2016 and 2017. We've already provided you all the 2018 data for the district. The state just hasn't, they won't show it until next year. So this is the 2016 and 2017 data. You can see our participation rate for all of our student groups are higher than the state's participation rate. And then when you look at the performance, at or above criterion, for AP it would be a 3 or higher, and for IB it would be a 4 or higher. You can see that we've shown increases at the all students, the African American, the Hispanic, and the economically disadvantaged. When you look at the SAT data, again, this is lagging data for the class of 2017. We've already provided you the class of 2018 from the district. The 2017 data shows that even though our rates decreased for participation, we are still 17.4 percentage points higher in participation than the state. And then we also have the performance for both SAT and ACT. So let me show you that data here. This would be the participation data. So again, this is for 2017. I've already showed you, we've already presented 2018, and it's even higher. But what's exciting about this is we've got 90% of our graduates in 2017 that had participated in SAT or ACT, compared to the state at 73%. And that's also thanks to the board for funding and supporting SAT for All as a school day test for juniors. Then when you look at the performance, this is the percentage of students performing at or above criterion. For SAT, that criterion is an 1180 off of the evidence-based reading and writing and math combined, or for ACT, it's a 24 on the composite. And you can see that we actually had an increase for all students, African American, Hispanic, white, and economically disadvantaged. And we were within 1 percentage point for the state for our African American students. In fact, it was only 0.5 off. And the same thing for economically disadvantaged. We were 0.7 percentage points off. And this is the performance, the average scores. Then we can look at the ACT data. You can see that we had increases for all of our student groups, and we exceeded the state in all of our student groups. But these are also, we have a smaller percentage of students who take the ACT. This is more self-selected because this isn't a test that we pay for at the district level. When we look at the advanced courses, dual credit courses, this includes AP, IB, dual credit, dual enrollment courses. Again, this is a lagging indicator. It's for the 16-17 school year. Our completion rate increased by 0.8 percentage points, and we're higher than the state. So this shows for any subject area, looking at all of our different student groups, all of our groups are outperforming the state in the percent of students who are passing advanced or dual credit courses. let's see, now when we look at the college and career military ready, this is aligned to your board goal 2, which is making sure that our students are graduating as global graduates, and we're measuring it off of the post-secondary readiness or college career ready indicators by the state. So the state actually takes their CCMR, College Career Military, and breaks it up into 2 pieces. One is their college ready and the other is career military. They put together. And you can see that the district performed higher than the state for our African American, Hispanic, white, economically disadvantaged, and English learner students on the college ready indicator. That's awesome. And then when you look at the career military ready indicator, our African American and special ed students were higher than the state. And then when you put them together as a CCMR indicator, our African American, Hispanic, white, special ed, economically disadvantaged, and English learner students all were at a higher CCMR than the state was. It's when you put us together, for the all students, we are still a little bit lower than the state. The interesting thing also about looking at it by college and career military is these can be duplicated. They're not mutually exclusive. So you can have students who are meeting the college ready indicators, and they're going to be shown here. And you also have students who could be meeting the career military indicator, and they would also be shown here. Now, when you combine them, this would be the unduplicated count. And you can see for the unduplicated counts, we are exceeding the state in all of the student groups for each one of these on the CCMR. Another piece that is in the TAPER report is looking at enrollment in higher ed, but specifically it focuses on the THECB data. So that's enrolling in Texas institutions of higher ed. This is also a 2-year lagging indicator in the TAPER report. So this is for the 15-16. We've already provided to you all the data for the class of 2017 using the National Student Clearinghouse. So that's even more comprehensive and more current. But we're going to show you what is available from the state. And you can see with this one, our enrollment decreased a little bit, but so did the state. You can also see that we increased the percent of students who are not needing remediation. And this would be the graphic that goes along with that. So you can see while we decreased a little bit in the percent of enrolled students in Texas institutions of higher ed, so did the state. But we have an increase larger than the state did in the percent enrolled without remediation. The next piece is discipline. This is actually not provided in the TAPER, but we are required by the state to present this during this public hearing. This is from the data that you all have already received in the disciplinary action report in December. But we wanted to pull out just a couple of things that are required by the state to show you tonight. So we're looking at the out-of-school suspensions, which went down for all of the grade levels except for middle school. That one increased. And we also are showing weapons possessions, which in a second you will see that that increased. So right now I'm going to show the out of school. And when you look at the last 5 years, out of school suspensions have gone down at all of the academic levels except for middle school, which went up, but is still lower than it was in 15-16 and the 3 prior years. But when you look at weapons possessions, so this is actually a little bit different of a trend. We're seeing an increase across all of the grade levels and at the district. We are now at 82 weapons possessions. This would include using or possessing a firearm, illegal knife, club, prohibited weapon, non-illegal knife on campus, and being within 300 feet of the campus. So that has increased over the last couple of years. Still not as high as it was 4 years ago. The next piece that I want to kind of wrap up on is going to be on staff. This is another part of the TAPER report. We're going to be showing the proportion of teachers versus students based on race and ethnicity. We're also going to be looking at years of experience and average staff salaries. So when you look at our student population, which we had already presented at the beginning of this report, and then compare it to our HISD teacher population, we have more Hispanic students than we do Hispanic teachers. We have a larger percent of African American teachers and of white teachers. So actually we have a pretty even mix of Hispanic, white, and African American, leaning more towards African American teachers. It doesn't quite reflect the population of our students. But when you look at teaching staff by gender, comparing the last 2 years, we're fairly consistent. But what's interesting here is we hire more male teachers than the state on average does. So we have a little bit higher percentage of teachers that are male. And when you look at years of experience, we have a higher percentage of beginning teachers and teachers in years 1 through 5 than the state average is. But when you look at over 20 years, we are very close to the state average. We're at 15.1% and the state is at 15.3%. So we're very similar when you're talking about those really veteran teachers. And when you look at average teacher starting salaries, or average teacher salaries, we exceed the state in all of the different experience groups. So our average teacher salary is higher than the state average teacher salary by each of those different experience groups. And for class size, we also have decreased our average class size in grades K through 6, and we are below the state average. We've also decreased our average class size in math, even though we are above the state average at secondary level for all of the other content areas, but it's not by much, and you can see the data in your TAPER report. And as a summary, just to wrap it up, for the 2018 accountability rating, we all know that the district received a not rated Harvey because of the hurricane. We met that criteria. However, our calculated score was an 84, which would have given us a B if we had received a rating. We also, by state, have to inform everyone that our 2018 special education determination status is needs intervention, and they are working on that right now with the state. There's also the 2018 first rating that Chief Barajas and team reported recently, and that's a superior, and our 2017-18 accreditation status was accredited. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Any questions from my colleagues? Oh, it's not. Like, she's not popping up. She's pressing, but it's not. We've been joined by Ms. Wanda Adams. Ms. Sung.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Dr. Lathan. Thank you, Ms. Stevens, for this presentation. Much appreciated. So actually, we'll start with a question from your last slide, and then I'll go back to the beginning. So the overall score of 84, I've had some questions from the public as to whether schools, individual schools that were not rated because of Harvey are factored into that hypothetical calculation or not.
Yes, all of the data. So that's basically the data from the district, which would include all of the students no matter what campus they're at. Mm-hmm. So it's not an aggregate of campus ratings. What it is the district's data on all of the Domain 1, Domain 2, and Domain 3 indicators gave us a calculated score of an 84.
Okay. I just want to underscore that and celebrate it, because
yes.
It means even though we missed 2 to 4 weeks of school, depending on what school you were at because of Harvey, right? We still tested our students as usual and would have gotten an 84, right? A B, which is higher than many districts that did not face Harvey. So yes, that's really something to celebrate. I'm wondering for the special education determination status, and this is something relatively new. I've only seen it on the last 2 tapers, right?
It's at, I don't recall, I think it's been multiple years that's been produced on the taper.
Okay,
and I think
right.
APS even had it too. It's been a part of the reporting that comes from the state.
Okay. Could you explain to us a little bit what does it mean that it needs intervention? What are the factors that the state's looking at that results in us receiving this needs intervention status?
That I would have to actually turn that over to the special education department. It's going to be part of the PBMAS. It's part of that state indicator system that evaluates our special education, our multilingual, our at-risk Title I students. So I can turn that over to Dr. Verrett.
Good evening. It's exactly all of that. It's all of the indicators that are factored in to identify what is our actual rating. PBMAS, all of the compliance indicators, all of the students who move in and out of district. It's all of the indicators that help us to determine what that rating is.
Okay. So where is it that our special education needs intervention?
So multiple areas. Of course, direct instruction in terms of how we are providing support and ensuring that they're receiving the interventions that they need, designated supports in the areas of English language arts and reading, but also in how we approach the RIP process. That's a key that we need to make sure that we are ensuring that we're following the RIP process, and it's being driven by the FIE.
Okay. Does that also include does the state also look at where we place students and then how we're doing in terms of including students? And
yes, that indicator is factored in as well. Okay. Because we are a large district, and because of the fact that there's students who are in self-contained placements, we have a tendency of having slightly more students placed in those placements because they need specialized support.
Okay. So then the next steps, and I know we have the same rating the year previous, right, in 2017. So what happens now? The status, do we have to make a plan, or what happens?
We're working. 9 months old. I'm not sure the comparison, but yes, we are doing a self-reporting exploration now, looking at campuses to see exactly our areas of compliance, and we're building our individual strategies and corrective action plans based upon those areas that we need the most attention.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I know how hard you're working on that. I appreciate that. Okay. So going back to the rest of the presentation, so there's a lot to celebrate here, right? From 2017 to 2018 in terms of STAR, a lot of progress. One area that I know that the board didn't set an explicit goal for was science, right? And so I'm wondering, when I see that our science scores are, that there was a decrease, that's page 12. It makes me a little bit worried, especially because the state went the other way, right? So I always worry a little bit more. Like if the state's going headed one way and we're headed the other way, well, then does that mean that our prioritization of math and reading especially has meant that we're not paying as much attention to the science?
Good afternoon. No, actually we're paying just as much attention to science as well on all of the subject areas. We're providing professional development. In fact, I believe there was a data review today focused on science, and so we have specific professional development that's centered around science as well, professional development for content area teachers, not only if you think about it at secondary level, but also at our elementary schools.
Okay, that's good. So then I wonder what's our analysis then of why our science scores decreased across student groups?
As we've made changes in our curriculum, made changes around, like I said, leadership, and looking at that across the entire district, but also at individual schools, we took a step back and took an assessment to say, here's what we needed to do. We needed to strengthen professional development. So when we saw the dip in the scores, that's when we developed our academic plan for the 17-18 school year, and then also moving into the 18-19 school year, that it once again goes to ensuring that our leaders have the necessary supports that they need, and that they understand the various science content areas, and then that they were able to then work and support our teachers. And so both the elementary and secondary curriculum departments looked at that and developed the professional development in collaboration even with our student assessment department, of ensuring that we were providing information to teachers and principals on how to analyze the data and then to develop a plan.
Okay. Thank you. As a former science teacher, that's reassuring. Thank you. Page 18, I just want to note, in terms of our graduation and dropout rates, there's a big gap there for our EL students, right? And so we're really lagging the state. And, EL students seem to do better across the states than they're doing in HISD in terms of graduation and dropout. And so I just want to underscore that that's a group that we really need to be paying attention to and developing strategies to support graduation. So, and then page 29. So here we're looking at dual credit course completion, and I know we're going to look at that in a little bit later as well, but the percentages are quite different. So I'm wondering, is the denominator different here?
Yes, and this is actually the 15-16 and 16-17. So what you're going to be seeing in the board monitoring is for 18-19. Okay. So there's a big gap. And this is also looking at students in grades 9 through 12. Okay. So it is a different denominator than the denominator we're looking at.
Okay, great, thank you.
And this is also including AP and IB and dual credit and dual enrollment all together. And we're showing AP and IB separate.
Got it.
And dual credit separate and the CTE separate.
I see. So this is advanced. That's why it's advanced dual credit.
Yeah,
it's
it actually, well,
okay.
There was supposed to have been a hyphen. You can see on slide 28. Okay. It's advanced / dual credit courses.
Got it. Okay.
We realized we missed the hyphen on this slide. So it's your advanced courses, which would include AP, IB, dual credit, dual enrollment, any of the advanced courses.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Sure.
On page 37, I noticed we have well, let me back up. On page 36, I want to celebrate the decrease in out-of-school suspensions. So I know that's been board-led, but also a lot of hard work by our staff to change that culture and support our students to be successful in school. So I want to celebrate that. On page 37, I'm wondering, that's a worrying increase in weapons possessions after a trend of decrease, and I'm wondering if there's any explanation for that and then what we're doing about it.
No explanation other than we have a lot of weapons that are lookalikes. If you think about it, or BB guns and different types of weapons that can be, I'm saying over the counter, but you can buy in the toy section or whatever. And so we have various levels of students bringing in those types of weapons, and we have other weapons. Oftentimes students say, of course, they're using them for possible defense as it relates to their travel to school or other issues that we might have. Of course, we are trying to address issues around gangs and how students settle differences. That's why we've looked at our restorative circles, and we've looked at adding interventions and counselors and community supports, partners that can help us support that through that.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, I'll just note, it's good to see that, although we always wish we were paying our teachers more, that at least compared to the states, that our salaries are higher. And I'll just note that it seems like we need to be continuing to work to diversify our applicant pool for teaching staff so that, we can continue to recruit teachers from all backgrounds so that our students can see themselves reflected in their teachers, because we know the research shows that matters. Okay, those are my questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Dita?
Thank you, Madam President and Madam Superintendent and Ms. Stevens. I appreciate your report. It's a lot of information. It's good information, and it's a lot to digest quickly. My colleague probably asked most of the questions, but I want to just dive in a little deeper on page 18 on the dropout. four-year longitudinal study on dropout. As we know, dropout is a student outcome indicator that's very important. And my understanding, what I was reading, is that it seems to have been flatlined. There's no decrease overall in our district. And also this report says it's a four-year longitudinal study on the dropout rate, but there's only evidence of 2-year.
No, it's not a four-year longitudinal study. This is the four-year longitudinal dropout. So this is looking at a four-year class. So starting with ninth graders and looking at them 4 years later.
Like
so
a cohort.
It's a cohort.
Cohort?
Another way of saying cohort is 4-year.
Okay.
So
Because-
that's just our term for a cohort study of looking at your ninth graders 4 years later. Did they graduate or did they drop out? The other options could be a GED or continued in school.
So in all the groups that are listed here, all of them showed a decrease in dropout rates except for special ed. Is that correct? It's a little difficult to read these bar graphs.
Yes.
Which I like a lot, but these are a little bit difficult for me. Trying to follow the shades there.
Right. So the African American students, they decreased.
Yes.
The Hispanic students increased by just a little bit from 12.4 to 12.6. White students, they increased from 12.2 to 13.0 on the dropout. Special ed, they decreased. They went from 19.4 to 17.9% on their dropout. Economically disadvantaged, about the same, went from 12.6 to 12.8. And our L students, even though their graduation rates are lower than the state and the dropout rates are higher, they actually did show a decrease in the dropout rate from 31.6 to 30.3.
So overall, would you say dropout rate has increased or decreased?
It is decreased.
Decreased, right?
Yeah, when you look at the different student groups, there's only like 2 of them that went up. For the district as a whole, we stayed flat at 12.6.
Mm-hmm. So the 2 groups that increased dropout rates were
the white students and the Hispanic students.
the white students and Hispanics.
And economically disadvantaged.
And
by
economically
2/10.
disadvantaged, which is the majority of our students.
Right.
Would you say that? Okay.
Yes, but it only increased by 2/10.
Yes. Okay, I just wanted to point that out. On page, back to the weapons possession, page 37.
Yes.
And I just wanted to state, we're not making much progress on the dropout rate. Would you say so?
Oh, I agree. We're flat at 12.6.
Thank you. I just want to clarify that. On page 37, on the 2013, 2014, across the district, I don't know what was going on that year, but there was a high percentage of possessions of weapon. 2017, 2018 on the last column, the last row, it's actually less than 2013 and 2014.
Yes.
There's some specific dynamics happening. I don't know what happened in 2013 and 14. I don't know.
Well, in 14-15 was even higher. So
Right.
13-14 was 176 across the
That's right,
district.
182
And
total.
14-15 was 182. We're at 82, so that's less than those 2 higher years, but we are higher than the last 2 lower years.
Yeah, that's interesting to note if there's a study being conducted as to what's happening there because, back, I don't know, it's back in 2014 and 15, I don't know if we've had, a lot of unfortunate situations in our schools and the social media, explosion back then, but now it's more prevalent, so that may be contributing factors, I don't know, but.
And also
something to-
coding. Sometimes it's just how the data are coded.
Right, okay,
And
there you go.
the definitional.
Right.
So that can also impact.
So let's say a
percentage little
student
bit,
brought a butter knife to first grade or kindergarten, it can be considered possession of a weapon.
Depending
And
on
depending
how
on-
the campus
on-
coded it.
On how it's coded and recorded. Okay. I just wanted to, this is pretty interesting presentation. Thank you for your work.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I don't see anybody else. Any further questions from my colleagues? Now you did. Ms. Killer-Jones.
Couple of questions. Do we have a stat on what our economically disadvantaged across the district is as compared to the economically disadvantaged across the state?
Yes, ma'am. And that would be
Complete.
slide number 6. So we are 75% economically disadvantaged for the 2017-18 school year, and the state was 58.8%.
Okay, and that was with a decrease in economically disadvantaged enrollment, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you see where I'm going
Lower
with
than the
that?
previous year, yes.
Right, okay. Do we break this data down, and I don't need it, I just want to know if we're examining it by the schools to see if there are particular trends where we have the decrease, especially in science, to see if there's a trend in a particular school, if it's concentrated in one area, or if it's, a random problem, or if there's, just so we can look at the root cause of it maybe. I don't know if do we look at that by schools? Okay.
And we
you don't
have
have to give it to
been-
me. I just want to know that it's been.
Sure, and the STAR data, like I said, this is all data from the state now. We've already presented to you all the STAR data when we got it, and the reports that we have that are available on our website that we also provided to you all has it by campus. So we have all of the data by campus, by grade, by content area. All of that is available to you all and was presented in June, so it's been a while, I'm sure. Sure, you saw it then. It's been a while since you've seen it, and we're showing it again now. But yeah, we have it.
And on the, we talked about this some time back, but in talking to law enforcement, so in looking at the weapons possessions, right, that's a record of not what's being brought to school, but what's being found by the officers. So not necessarily is that a reflection of how many weapons are being brought into the school, but how many that our officers are recovering.
Yeah, this is disciplinary actions that are coded with those weapons codes.
Okay.
And they could also, I just want to make sure that it's clear, these aren't numbers of students, these are numbers of incidents. So it could be one student with multiple incidents. So it's not an unduplicated count of kids, it's the number of incidents of weapons possessions.
Okay. Okay. I do too want to remark that you hear the myth all the time that our middle class people are leaving and our white students are leaving, and actually this debunks both of those myths. It's our economically disadvantaged that are leaving, and we know where they're going. And we actually have an increase in white enrollment and a decrease in our Hispanic and African American enrollment. So that's interesting to know. Thank you.
Any more questions from my colleagues? There is none. All right, we're going to move on to our actual board meeting. This regular board meeting of the Board of Education has now reconvened at 5:21. Board members present: Trustee Adams, Trustee Jones, Trustee Villaseca Ocampo, Trustee Santos, Trustee Sung, Trustee Dr. Lita, and Trustee Skiller-Jones. I would like to ask everyone to please silence your cell phones. Please rise for a moment of silence meditation. Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance and honors of the Texas flags. Today's pledge leader is Cadet Luis Vasquez, who will lead the Pledge of Allegiance and the honors to the Texas flags. I would like to ask Trustee Flynn Villaseca to introduce the pledge leader, since Westside High School is one of her schools.
Cadet Luis Vasquez is the battalion commander for the JROTC battalion at Westside High School. He will lead the Pledge of Allegiance and the salute to the Texas flag. Cadet Vasquez has a 3.3 GPA and has distinguished himself in JROTC, academics, and community support activities. He is a commander of the JROTC drill team, captain of the JROTC Ranger swim team, and captain of the JROTC physical fitness team. After graduating high school, Cadet Vasquez plans to attend the University of Houston to study engineering and to gain an active duty officer commission into the U.S. Army. Thank you so much, Cadet Vasquez.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now for the Texas Pledge. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Cadet Vasquez. We are now ready for the special recognition portion of our meeting. This month we are highlighting schools in District 3. I want to recognize the following schools who performed in the lobby. Chavez High School, Ortiz Middle School, Lewis Elementary School provided the mariachi performers, ballet folklorico dancers from Ortiz Middle School, and Stevenson Middle School, and the Vietnamese folk dancers are the Park Place Elementary Schools. Let's recognize them and their amazing directors, Mario Prado, Samara Martinez, Ángel Hernández, Miguel Ponce, Fong An Hill, and Rosa Saldivar with a round of applause. We are also pleased to feature a student performance by two additional District 3 schools, the Ortiz Middle School and the Chavez High School choirs, under the direction of Joseph Fusler, I'm going to apologize, and Farin Makulob. They will be performing Star Spangled Banner and then Let There Be Love. Do we stand for the start?
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? We're the children of tomorrow and children of today. We're just trying hard to make it a better world each day. We are all your sons and daughters who need your help, we pray. Give us a chance to sing our way. Let there be love in the world for every boy and girl. Let there be peace in our hearts. No need to be apart. Let all the children of the world sing a brand new song. Let there be peace. Let there be peace. Let there be love. Stop the wars and all the fighting, and let the sun shine in. Stop the hunger and the hurting, and let we ask and stop our parents to give peace a chance. Let us grow together as friends. Love for everyone. Let there be peace. Love. No need to be apart. Let all the children of the world sing a brand new song. Let there be peace. Let there be love. Let the bells, let them ring. All the children sing. Let each heart from the start have a chance to sing. To sing. Let there be love in the world for every boy and girl. Let there be peace in our hearts. No need to be apart. Let all the children of the world
thank you very much again for the talent of Ortiz and Chavez Middle School's District 3 performers today. We thank you for coming out and singing about love on Valentine's Day. On to the next. We are proud to recognize our HISD Employee of the Month for March. It's actually February. Would Gail McGee, Senior Manager, Academics, along with Cecilia Singh, please step forward for this presentation? Oh, so it is March. Thank you.
Thank you. Thought someone else could read some nice things. I just want to say thank you to the board for recognizing the hard work and talents of one of my employees, which is Cecilia Singh. She has been dedicated day and night to the work that we do, supporting our beginning teachers, our mentors, and our teacher leaders, and really single-handedly managing some incredible opportunities. Our beginning teachers are doing a lot of half-day observations of some of the exemplary teachers in the district, and Cecilia is really behind that magic. So I just wanted to recognize her and say thank you for having her on my team.
Thank you.
I just want to thank, I'm just so proud to be part of HISD and that we actually have a department that cares about new teachers, and I am part of that. And I once was a first-year teacher and I didn't have that support, and that was 20 years ago. But I am very, very proud that now we have a team that actually helps beginning teachers and tell them it is okay. There are going to be some days that are not going to be perfect, but that is teaching. And just be resilient and be there and be present for your students and give the best you can. So I'm very proud to be part of Team HISD. And thank you for this recognition.
February is Black History Month, celebrated throughout the school district and across the nation. I'd like to ask Trustee Adams to read the official proclamation that has been prepared.
Thank you, Madam President. Proclamation, Black History Month, February 2019. Whereas each February, Black History Month honors enduring legacy of struggles and triumph of African Americans and celebrate and acknowledges the significant contribution of African American men and women have made on our great cities, state, and country. And African Americans have played a significant role in the history of Houston and Texas from the early days of the pioneers to the present day, leading our community in such industries as education, medicine, finance, government, and international trade. And whereas we believe that it is highly beneficial for all segments of our community to embrace and learn from our richly diverse cultures and to pay tribute to outstanding individuals who have risen above mere circumstances and become prized role models, not for only African American children, but for children of all races. The HISD Board of Education proudly and gratefully acknowledge the contribution of African Americans at every level of the district, from parents, volunteers, crossing guards, teachers, district staff, elected officials, and each one plays an important part of the team. And it is fitting that we set aside a special time to acknowledge the important segment of citizens of our community, to recognize their rich history and to appreciate their valuable contributions. Now, therefore, we, the members of the Houston Independent School District Board of Education, proclaim February 2019 as Black History Month in HISD. I encourage all to participate and enjoy the many activities occurring throughout the district that celebrate the rich history of African American culture. In witness thereof, on this 14th day, February, Interim Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Grenita Latham, President of the Board of Education, Diana Davila. Thank you, Madam President.
Now on to our last presentation. I am very pleased to invite Principal Cooper of Lockhart Elementary to the podium to introduce the winner of this year's Martin Luther King Jr. Oratory Contest winner.
Good evening, Board. Thank you for allowing Nyla Johnson, one of our fifth grade students, to present her MLK speech, the winning speech this year, to the board and the audience. She is an excellent student, a leader in our campus, and without further ado, Nyla Johnson. Hi, baby. You ready? Yeah.
We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by God, Creator, with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? I wonder, is this why we separated those young children from their parents while trying to enter the United States? We called it land of the free and home of the brave, yet we turn people away. Is this why we need to build the wall? Or is this why we as children are hesitant to go to school in fear that we may not return home every day? I wonder if the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. were here today to speak to children like you and me, I am positive that he would say, "My dear children, although we have not fulfilled the dream, we cannot lose hope. You have to keep fighting. You must continue the work of your ancestors. You must rise and get out of this place of complacency. I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. No matter your ethnicity, race, or gender, you come from a people that fought to make life better. You come from a legacy that says, I will not settle for second best. I will fight to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. Don't give in to the noise that says we need to make America great again. This implies that somewhere along the way, we stopped. Lies, or should we say, alternative facts. When we fought Great Britain for our freedom to become our own country, we proved that we were great. When we fought to restore unity to our young nation and abolish slavery during the American Civil War, we proved that we were great. When we helped to free our Jewish brothers and sisters from the evil hands of Adolf Hitler's Nazi regime, we proved that we were great. When we came together on the steps of the Lincoln Monument in 1963, we proved that we were great. When 1 million black men came together to show a united front and demand justice and equality, we proved that we were great. When you, the children of these United States of America, came together to protest gun violence using your voices through modern technology, you proved that we are still great. Black men, white men, Jews, and Gentiles, all of God's children. America was great, America is great, and America will be greater because we as a people will fight to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. Yes, we've still got some difficult days ahead, but that really doesn't matter with me now. Because I've been to the mountaintop, and I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know today that we as a nation will get to the promised land. So I'm happy. I'm not worried. Mine eyes have seen the coming of the glory of the Lord. Thank you.
First of all, I just want y'all to know this is District 4. I'm slightly competitive. We got first and second. But hey, I'm not counting. I also am very, very, very proud of Nyla. She shared a very diverse, let's say it again, diverse vision of what this country is. And you rocked. And I want to thank you over at Lockhart because you were doing wonderful things with these children. And the truth is, if you came to the oratory contest, all of the kids were great. Like, all of them were. I would not have wanted to be a judge on that day. There are a lot of people. But I absolutely believe that you represent this district well. I think you represent this country well. I saw you on TV on Good Morning America. So you famous. But I want to give you this certificate of recognition. And it's just a certificate of recognition presented to Nyla Johnson from Houston Independent School District Board of Education for outstanding achievement as the Gardner MLK Oratory Competition 2019 champion from my elementary school, Lockhart Elementary. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Nyla Johnson. This year was the first year I actually missed the MLK Oratory winner. I was actually, my grandmother had passed away, and that was the day of her funeral. But thank you also, Ms. Nyla Johnson, for reminding us that America is great and will continue to be great. And with students like you, with young leaders like you, there is no doubt in my mind that it will be even greater. Thank you. Now on to our next presentation. I would like to ask Hank Dimitro with HYN Associates to step forward and provide an update concerning the status of the superintendent search.
Thank you. Well, I have to start, Nyla, by saying I've done many a presentation, and you are the hardest act I have to follow. So, wonderful job. Thank you. If that's a representation of the students that you are producing in HISD, you guys are doing a great job. This evening, I just want to give you an update on the leadership profile report that we conducted during the 2 weeks in January to give you the feedback that we heard from various constituents as we visited in multiple schools around the district. The information is being shared in summary form here. But I encourage you to take the pieces of the report, the executive summary, the survey results, and all of the notes that we collected and share those publicly on your website, because as we met with constituents, we gave them the information that we were going to be sharing the information with board members, but we would also be making that information public. So the notes are a rather long document. There's 66 pages of comments that people made to us, but they may want to read some of the information that they shared. We were here for the 2 weeks from January 14th through the 25th, and we had the chance to meet with 596 people in 19 different forums across the district. The forums were open to anyone who wanted to come in terms of parents, students, community members, leaders. They were held in each one of the districts around the district, but also they were open to anybody who chose to attend them. There were also 947 people who completed an online survey, which was another option to give some input into the process. During the process, we basically asked 5 critical questions about the strengths of HISD as a school district, the challenges that you're facing, the most important characteristics that constituents would like to see in the new superintendent, the feedback that they may have on the 2016 desired characteristics that were created a couple of years ago through a similar process, and then any additional comments they wanted to share, and any suggested candidates that they may have. During the community forums, there was open dialogue about those questions, and each of them lasted approximately an hour to an hour and a half, and people had a chance to share their thoughts. But we also had the questions on a written format and asked the participants to share their individual thoughts on that information, and those were the documents that I used to help to create all of the notes from the meeting. And in your report, there's a listing of the number of participants at each one of the forums. The strengths of the district supported many of the things that were identified in 2016, but also several items stood out. And diversity, which is what Nyla referenced in her eloquent speech, is certainly one of the most important strengths that your constituents see in your school district and in your community. The racial, ethnic, economic diversity, the diversity within the economy of Houston, the resources that are available within your city were all really positive aspects of the wealth that you have as a system moving forward in terms of human resources and your city. There was also a strong focus on the work that has been done in reducing the number of schools in IR status, and a great deal of pride in the fact that that has moved from 55 schools, I think, down to 4 schools over the last 3 years. And people recognize the effort that had been put into that and acknowledge those accomplishments. There was numerous comments about the resources and the options that were available in terms of schooling. Magnet school programs, choice programs, vocational programs, options to go to other schools, the resources that are available in the schools, and many of those things got referenced repeatedly. The new and renovated high schools, and in some cases middle schools, I think, were also acknowledged often as a great strength of the district, and people are seeing the outcomes of the bond that they passed several years ago and are very pleased with those results. One of the other really significant issues that people referenced in a lot of different ways, but for the most part, stakeholders see the people in your organization as one of your greatest resources. They see the teachers, the support staff, the clerical staff, building level administrators, and they referenced lots of different groups throughout the process, but they focused on the commitment and the professionalism and the work that those individuals do on a daily basis in the schools to assist students and to help them become their best. And then the last major theme that was identified was the decentralization and the fact that schools are allowed to use the resources that are available to meet the needs of their local communities. And those were referenced quite often as a way to make a large system far more personalized at the local school level. During the survey, it's not a totally open-ended question in the survey. There's a list of 20 different factors, and the ones that were identified on the survey as strengths were similar in some ways. Technology topped the list, interestingly enough, and that was not one that I heard repeatedly out in the community forums. But I did hear about employees working to high standards and being held accountable to high standards. Again, the diverse racial, cultural, and economic resources that you have within the system, the effectiveness of teachers, administrators, and support staff in the school, and also was identified that teachers personalize instructional strategies to meet the needs of a wide range of students, and that gets back to the variety of choice programs that exist. Some of the challenges and issues that were identified, the board's turmoil and sometimes controversy on various topics was identified repeatedly. One of the things that constituents said is they would really encourage the board to focus on needs of students. An interesting aspect is that they acknowledged that they felt all 9 of you were really well-intended and good people wanting to work in the best interest of children, and thought that you had more in common than sometimes comes across in your public discussion. And so they encourage you to find those areas of common ground and common purpose as you move forward together. Some of the other challenges that were identified is the potential takeover of the state based on IR status schools. It's a worry that community members and staff members have. Budgeting and funding came up repeatedly, and this is more at the level of the access to revenue and revenue that comes from the state. Recapture was often referenced as the culprit or the villain in this scenario in terms of losing money and having to pay money back to the state through the recapture process. But having sufficient funding and resources to fund a quality education was a strong desire of constituents. On the more local level, many constituents did feel that there's still inequities of how resources are distributed across schools and would like to see the district work at addressing those inequities. One of the things that was particularly noted were the inequities that go to smaller schools, and because of the concept of scale, don't have the same kinds of resources to be able to devote to common services such as nurses or counselors, librarians, as some of the larger schools do. And so that was a major concern by constituents. The educational issue that came across, and this was a very repeated theme across community forums, was educating the whole child and far less of a focus on test prep and judging schools by simply looking at state test scores. That there really is a desire to support the issue of science was referenced earlier, of making sure that the curriculum is well-rounded, the arts are supported, all the instructional areas are supported, and certainly reading and math scores are an important variable, but they shouldn't come at the expense of eliminating other areas. And then on a very practical level, I know you made some changes in your transportation system. There was a fair amount of frustration still being expressed in how transportation is working and some of the things that need to be worked out to resolve that. And it's complicated by the fact that you have a lot of choice in the system, so there's many different transportation permutations that need to be worked out.
I'm going to pause you real quick to acknowledge that we've been joined by Trustee Dygard.
Sure. The challenges that came across on the survey, out of those 20 variables that were asked, is transparent communication from the district being financially responsible, the district heading in the right direction, and providing a well-rounded educational experience. So it reinforced many of the concepts at the community forums, but communication certainly came across as one of the issues. In terms of desired characteristics, we asked for that information on the survey, and these were the top 4 variables that got identified on the survey. Fostering a positive professional climate of mutual trust, to then deal with the long-term financial health of the school district, again, going back to the personnel issue, but recruiting, employing, and retaining highly effective staff. And lastly, understanding that whole need of your diversity within your community and being able to support that and address that. That information was specific to the survey because, again, there were a set number of variables that people ask about. But I also asked for feedback on the 2016 criteria that was developed. And for the most part, the feedback was expressed from the point of view that it was still on target, it was still comprehensive. If people were suggesting changes, they said it was too wordy and it needed to be focused on priorities. So one of the things that I tried to do when I looked at the desired characteristics that came across from the community forums was to try to focus on the priority areas. Many of these are in the 2016 characteristics, but there were 7 items that I thought came across strongly at the community forums as to what's being sought in the next superintendent. And the first and foremost one that came across, I think, most widely was a student and staff focus. To look at the needs of students and put that as the priority in the decision-making process, and then to work with staff and engage them in that decision-making process and help support them in their efforts to deliver services to students. In the 2016 criteria, it was a little bit more generic about community focus and a little bit broader in terms of stakeholders. This time around, there was a really concerted number of comments about a desire for both student focus and decision making and staff support to help that process move forward. The second qualification that people are seeking in the next superintendent gets back to one of the challenges, and that's the ability to work with you as a board and to help guide the board. And I think the most important comment that came across is to really try to find a way to develop a widely held sense of common purpose and strategic direction for you as you move forward. People are sometimes confused by all of the choice that they have because there's lots of different options within HISD. And there was a question about what's our common purpose that we're all working towards in a common direction. And so how do you define that clearly and have the superintendent guide that process? There was also a strong desire to address one of the challenges about the inequities among schools and the willingness to address those equity kinds of issues, and to talk about the strength that that will take on the part of the superintendent. Because when you try to change long-held practices within a system as large as HISD, those changes may not be easy. They may not be comfortable. You're not going to be faced with a large infusion of money to address those inequity issues. So there's a great potential that the decisions being made may create winners and losers. And so community members were looking at somebody who has both the professional will to move forward on that and the political skills to how do you bring the community together around those discussions to figure out what the right solution is. And then the fourth one is an understanding of and a commitment to HISD. Lots of concerns about the short tenure of the previous superintendent. And while circumstances change and no one can control all the variables, that feeling on the part of constituents is we would like to find a superintendent who wants to be part of us for the long term and to be here and is committed to helping us move forward as an organization and to really be part of us. So, and kind of the other thing was an understanding of Houston and Texas. There was a feeling that a number of other superintendents have come from outside and have tried to fix Houston, and that may not be the right formula moving forward. Somebody who deeply understands the culture of Texas and understands the working in Houston might bring some skills to this position as they move forward that would be really helpful, particularly in finding that common purpose and common vision moving forward. Along with being committed, the constituents and stakeholders talked about somebody who's really a strong advocate at both the state level and the city level, to really be the cheerleader for HISD, to develop the professional relationships that are necessary to work through the issues as they arrive with conflicts with TEA or with the legislatures, and to really develop strong city and social service foundations within your larger community as you move forward. The third one, the sixth one actually on the list, was the instructional focus on the whole child. I mentioned this as the challenge, but a desire to say, how do we keep the education of the whole child, both in terms of the curriculum as the major focus and the superintendent leading that effort, with a reduction of emphasis on standardized testing. And a second piece of that is also, how do we address the social emotional needs of students and make sure those kinds of support systems are in place so that children can be successful? And then the last one relates to one of the challenges as well, and that's fiscal knowledge and management, to put the district on a strong financial foundation to move forward by advocating for additional resources at the state level and maybe local level if that's necessary, but to also operate in a fiscally responsible manner within the district operation. So that's a 30,000-foot overview. There's lots more information in the full report. You have all of that, and you can see all of those comments. I encourage you to share that publicly. If you have suggestions, because what we'd like to do is to refine the desired characteristics as we move forward, and I don't want to take the time now to wordsmith it, but if you have suggestions on moving forward on those desired characteristics, if you think they should be captured differently, please email those to me. And the suggestion that I made in the report is that we move forward with these 7 priorities in terms of desired characteristics, along with the more comprehensive list of what was provided in 2016, and try to focus on both of those as the document to be used to help candidates understand what the board is seeking in their next superintendent. And with that, I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Follow up with questions, and we're going to make sure we keep ourselves on a time frame here. We have a lot of citizens who have signed up to speak today, and they've actually all been limited to 1 minute, so I'm going to ask my colleagues to be conscious of the time, even though we have 3 minutes, that we make sure we ask our questions and listen to the response so we won't repeat ourselves, and that there will be no second go around. So make sure you ask the question you need to ask within 3 minutes. But we're going to start with Ms. Dygard.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. As I read through, and I sent you an email about this, and I don't know if you've been able to get the information, but as I looked at the community responses to the surveys and comments from the public in the different community meetings, I'm curious how that compares to other school districts, the responses for our district, the board dysfunction, just some of the really low ratings that the public gives us on many of these different things. And I'm curious how all of that compares to other school districts who are looking for superintendents.
Well, on the survey, we're going to try to run national statistics on the survey questions, so I can give those to you. From my interpretation and my experience on this, budget funding, educating the whole child are 2 things that are typical challenges in many school districts of how do you have the necessary resources, and how do you then educate the whole child with the whole range of things, particularly in this era of accountability and state testing. So those are pretty common themes in terms of challenges. The other ones, board behavior, the potential takeover by the state, inequities of resources across the schools, and transportation are pretty specific to Houston. The inequity sometimes comes up, but yours, I think, is very much related to your funding mechanism for how you fund schools, and how you allocate the resources to your individual schools, and is probably somewhat expanded because you provide a great deal of flexibility at the school level. Many school systems are far more centralized and make the choices about what are the resources that are provided to every school and the baseline requirement, and then there's some discretion. Given your decentralization, it creates some of those inequities in terms of how local schools choose to use their resources.
Actually, I had 3 questions. They're all related. So my second one, with regards to the potential state takeover, do you think that could be a deterrent for us finding someone? I mean, from your experience, are candidates willing to sign contracts if they may be out of a job in a couple of months in that new position?
Yes, it will be. It's a question that candidates, as I've started conversations with potential candidates, it's a question they're asking. What's happening with the TEA's takeover? What's the potential of this occurring? What's the ramifications, particularly for out-of-state candidates? Some of the in-state candidates understand the mechanism of TEA a little better and the regulations. I think it's Senate Bill, House Bill 1842, and understand the dynamics of that. And so they have somewhat more of a comfort level to feel like I can navigate this, or I understand this, or I might be able to work with the state on these kinds of issues. But certainly for out-of-state candidates, it raises a question of what does this all mean, and is this the appropriate time for me to think about making a change? I might be interested in Houston, but I really don't want to give up a current job that I'm successful in for the potential of one that may not exist in a few months.
And then on the board dysfunction, I saw one of your slides that, the community and desired characteristics is someone that can work with us to find a common purpose. We're the leaders. It's a team of 10, though. We're supposed to set the vision. Have you found in your experience when you have, found a superintendent for a school district that is having challenges, that a superintendent fixes that? Or can fix that?
I don't know that a superintendent fixes it, but a superintendent certainly brings different skill sets to be able to facilitate that conversation. And some people are better at it than others. And in your particular case, I think it's a skill set that's necessary to help you move forward. Because as you say, you are a team of 10. You should be setting the vision and having those healthy, deep, sometimes difficult discussions about the direction you want to move in. But once that direction is set as a board, you need to all move forward together with it and let the superintendent carry that out and move forward. And I think the critical piece is that you have a clearly defined vision moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dygard. I see no one else in the queue with questions. So with that, we'd like to thank you for your presentation. Next, we move on to the superintendent's priority items. Dr. Latham, we will begin with the superintendent's items.
Good afternoon. I want to first start with updates as Ms. Stevens makes her way to the podium. The district will hold the next Parent University on Thursday, February 21st. The 6 locations hosting the session this month are Revere Middle School, Chavez High School, Cashmere High School, Worthing High School, and Challenge Early College High School. I want to personally thank these campuses in advance for their efforts to help us support our parents and families in providing information on district programs, resources, and parent engagement strategies. The theme will be supporting your child's safety, social, and emotional growth. All sessions will begin with dinner at 5:30. Translators will be on hand, and child care will be provided for ages 2 through 11. For registration and location information, visit our website, HoustonISD.org/Parent University. Also, starting February 25th through March the 8th, all middle school campuses will host a middle school parent workshop. These special events, coordinated by the Office of Innovation and Post-Secondary Programming, will provide information about college and career readiness resources, opportunities to receive college credit in high school, graduation requirements, and much more. The purpose of our middle school parent workshops is to ensure that every 8th grade parent in the district has access to the same information. The way you level the playing field is everyone has access to the same information and is equipped with how to navigate our district. So once again, February 25th through March the 8th, all middle schools will be hosting those events. We'll also be pushing out information to parents, so you'll see the dates and times of those events. I want to provide a quick reminder about the HISD Foundation's upcoming Public Education Matters Benefit Dinner on March the 5th. The event will highlight the importance of community investment in public education and focus on the social and economic impact that results when public school students receive a quality education. Funds raised at the benefit dinner will go directly to the HISD Foundation to support strategic student center initiatives like the Innovation Fund, which financially supports community gardens, robotics, coding, and literacy programs. Tickets are available to the general public and can be purchased at the HISD homepage. And finally, I'm pleased to share that our Government Relations Department, with the assistance of the communications team, has launched a toolkit to equip public education supporters with the necessary information to effectively advocate for school finance reform. This educational tool provides an overview of the challenges with the current system, outlines proposed solutions, and serves as a platform for direct communications with key lawmakers during the 2019 Texas legislative session. HISD has been a part of a statewide coalition of school districts, nonprofit organizations, and business leaders educating the public and emphasizing the need for meaningful change to the state school finance system. Reforming school finance and reducing recapture to the tune of $272 million this year are top priorities for HISD during the 86th Texas legislature. To learn more, check out our tools and resources on the HISD website, /Fix Schools Finance. At this time, Ms. Stevens will provide our monthly monitoring report.
Good evening again, President Davila, board members, and Superintendent Lathan. This is our monthly Lone Star Governance reporting on our goal progress measures. This time it's 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3, and our constraint progress measures 4.3. So goal 2, if you all remember, is the percentage of graduates who are meeting the global graduate standards, and we're measuring that by looking at the college and career readiness component of the state accountability. So as a progress measure, we're taking those components and kind of breaking it up into their different parts. The first one for goal progress measure 2.1 is taking the CTE piece of that and looking at the percentage of students who are completing a career technical education course, and we look at it by semester with a goal of 2 percentage point improvements. So when we look at how we're doing currently for the fall semester of 2018, we are at 66.4% of the grades 10 through 12 enrollment in the district who are passing a CTE course. So that actually is 4.4 percentage points higher than the spring of 2017. Spring of 2018, and it is a little bit lower than the fall of 2017. So if we continue to stay about where we are on track, but we need to continue to make sure students are actually taking and passing CTE courses. We're also breaking this information down at your request by different student groups, the first one being special education students. Since this is the first time that we've been tracking this information, we're providing it as a baseline. So for the fall of 2018, we have 53.3% of our special education students completing a CTE course, which is a little bit lower than all students, but it still is more than half. We also are providing the information to you for the Achieve 180 campuses. This is just a reminder again of what the schools are and which tier they're in. So when we look at the Achieve 180 campuses that are in the Achieve 180 office, that's the 36 schools, 10 of them are actually high schools. We have an increase in the percent of enrolled students who are completing a CTE course. It's the highest it's been. It's higher than spring, and it's higher than last fall. When you look at the Tier 3 campuses, there are 12 of them, 5 are actually high schools. That is a decrease. It's down to 68.3%, though that's still higher than the A180 office as a total. But it's lower than the spring of 2018 and the fall of 2017. And when you look at the Achieve 180 campuses that are in their regular feeder patterns and reporting to their regular area superintendents, that's 2 high schools out of the 17 campuses. That is actually a decrease from last fall, but an increase from last spring, and that's 80%. So that actually is a very high number. The other part, or a second part of that college and career readiness, is looking at advanced placement and international baccalaureate students, making sure that students who are taking those courses are passing them. We're looking at it again by semester, wanting a 2 percentage point increase. You can see that right now we are at 38.1% from the fall of 2018. That is actually 0.4 of a percentage point higher than the spring of 2018 AP and IB course completion, though it is lower than where we were the fall of this time last year. When you look at special education students, theirs is at 5.8% of enrolled special education students in grades 10 through 12 who are passing an AP or IB course. And when we look at it for the Achieve 180 campuses, first of all, the Achieve 180 office, that's at 19.9%. That is lower than both the spring of last year and last year's fall. And when you look at the Tier 3 campuses, that's also at 19.3%, very similar numbers, also lower than last spring and last fall. But for the Achieve 180 campuses, the high schools that are in their regular feeder patterns, that's at 29.9%, so a higher number, and it's higher than both last spring and last fall. And the third component that we look at for our goal progress measure for 2.3, looking towards that goal 2, is students completing a dual credit or dual enrollment course. Again, we do it by semester, and we want a 2 percentage point increase. And you can see that for fall of 2018, it's 8.7%. That is higher than the last fall, but it's lower than last spring. And when you look at special education students, we only have 1.1% of our enrolled special ed students completing a dual credit or dual enrollment course. And when we look at it for the Achieve 180 offices, the Achieve 180 office high schools, 5.2% are completing that actually, it says CTE, but that's actually a dual credit course. And that way is higher than the spring and the fall for both last spring and last fall. And the Tier 3 campuses, that's at 6%. That's the highest it's been since we've been tracking this. And also for the A180 feeder campuses, again, we're looking at dual credit and dual enrollment. I apologize for the slide. It's at 7.3%, which also is higher than we have been in any of the last times that we've been reporting this data. So now we'll move on to the constraints. We're going to look at constraint 4 today. Constraint 4 says that the superintendent shall not allow struggling schools to operate without highly qualified leaders and teachers in core subjects. And we've identified what struggling schools are. And the progress measure we're looking at today is the struggling schools and the percent of teaching positions at the struggling schools that are held by teachers certified in their specific subject areas and grades. So last time we looked at this, we looked at principals. This time we're looking at teachers. We want to make sure we get to 100%. Right now for the 18-19 school year, we have 98% of the teachers in the struggling schools in positions where they are in field. So that means that 2% are teaching out of field. That's 75 out of 3,305. But what's important to know is that you might have a teacher who is teaching multiple preps and only one of them may be out of field. They may actually be certified to teach all the other ones. They're coded the way the state is having us code this as being out of field. So this doesn't mean that every student that child teaches is receiving instruction from them not being certified in that area, but it means that at least one of their preps is out of field. They also could be on permit. But that's also not included if they're actually on a permit. And Ms. Julia Demick can speak more to this if you have any questions on it. And that's it.
Thank you. Any questions from my colleagues? Ms. Sung, and we're going to be at a 3-minute time constraint here. Yes, but I guess because of the number of speakers that we have, we're going to limit it to 3 minutes today because we are at 6:19. Okay, and we still have a full agenda.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll watch my time. Put the time up so I can see it. Thank you. All right. I want to thank you for the reporting on here. I know that we just updated these in December. You all have, gotten ready to turn around these new reports for us, and I really appreciate that they've got, all the components that we've asked for. I really appreciate the special ed reporting on the goals. I see that they start with this reporting period, which means we haven't been tracking it previously, right? And I really appreciate, Madam Superintendent, that in the superintendent response, there's attention to what we're going to be doing in terms of special education and making sure that students with disabilities have access to these opportunities. So thank you for everybody for bringing attention to that. So I'm wondering, with respect to constraint 4 and making sure that we have certified teachers in all of our schools. This is something we heard loud and clear from the community. It's something we wrote into the board governing framework because it's been of concern. I heard from parents, why do we get a good education in some schools in HIC and not in others? And so we started paying attention to this. So I'm wondering, were there strategies we were using in 2017, 2018 when we had a 99% attainment here versus in 2018, 2019 when we fell to 98%? Are there things that we should be looking at that we can bring back that would support this?
We're talking about 1% difference, and each school every year is different with the dynamics of the staff members that are hired. There are different situations, and we can look at it school by school. There are some schools that are struggling to retain teachers in core content areas of the biggies, and then we have a couple of CTE courses that we're trying to locate some teachers for some of those positions. But it varies from school to school, and we're trying to address those issues. Also, as we look to deploy central office staff members out to those campuses, we have to ensure that they are also certified in that particular subject area. So that's still our focus. That will continue to be our focus.
Okay, thank you. I noticed in the response it says we're going to have weekly reports running in September and October to monitor this. I remember in 2017 we were getting those reports even in the summer, right? And so that just might be a strategy you might consider. With regards to goal 2, I'm concerned by the 4% drop, kind of year to year, right? Fall 2017 to fall 2018 in terms of completion of APIB classes. And I'm wondering if we've done an analysis of why that is. There's small gains in dual credit, right? So maybe some kids are going more to dual credit classes, but overall it seems like the gain is smaller in dual credit is smaller than the drop in APIB and CTE classes. So I'm wondering what's going on.
Well, good evening, board members. To that point, Trustee Song, we have the new innovative post-secondary program division, which right now they're meeting with all high schools to kind of plan out for the next year how they want to be strategic in offerings for their student populations. And usually what that encompasses is surveys of students, also evaluating where the students are and potential for success in these programs. Directly related to APIB. Although the numbers are down for AP, we actually have had the highest number, and we had a 3% increase in the number of students passing AP courses from last year. Although, like I said, it's not reflected in the enrollment or completion rates, the percentage of students who are passing the courses successfully with the 3 or higher, though, is increasing across our district. But that is something we're going to be discussing and evaluating a little bit more, campus by campus, to see if there's opportunities and possibility to add more AP courses or IB. I know there's a big initiative and desire to look at IB offerings across our district to see if we want to expand to some different schools. So we do think that this number will increase across our board, well, across the district. But we also are concentrating our efforts on the students who are successfully passing the courses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and I think that this is, if I understand this correctly, this measure is students earning a 70 or above. Correct. Is that right, on the class? So the board as well is really focused on making sure students are completing the APIB classes, and then, of course, when we get that report in the summer, that they're passing the exams as well, earning that college credits. Okay, thank you. And I think there's a lot to celebrate in terms of our Achieve 180 offices, right, and improvements there. And so I want to celebrate that, but note that overall we want to make sure that across the district that we're seeing improvements as well.
Agreed.
Okay. And then the final thing I wanted to say is that when I was talking with families and parents over the course of this week about our college and career readiness, one of the things they noted was when they're looking at whether their child is college and career ready, they're looking at soft skills. They're looking at critical thinking. They're looking at communication. They're looking at teamwork and leadership. That's our global graduate standard. So while, we're looking at these specific courses, just like we heard in the HYA surveys, it's the soft skills that employers are looking for. So I want to note that. It's something the community is still saying.
if you don't mind, really quick to address that, because I'm glad you mentioned that. That's one thing we're going to focus on across our district. Within the teaks of every CTE course in the state, there are components that are soft skills related. So just emphasizing that to our teachers, but also we've been talking with Junior Achievement about incorporating some of their training in so they can provide it to the teachers and also directly to our students on the soft skills that businesses are looking for when they're looking at hiring employees or potential employees.
Thank you so much. You got 3 minutes. Thank you. Dr. Lida?
Yes, thank you, Madam President and Madam Superintendent. Just a quick question on constraint 4. Well, actually 2 questions. Madam Superintendent, could you share with me or members of the board here and the public, what's the difference between a highly qualified teacher and an effective teacher?
If you think about a highly qualified teacher, if we think about the state guideline as it relates to being certified in that particular area, if you think about title funds, No Child Left Behind, or Children Act Succeed Act, is teachers that are meeting those standards based on certification. As you think about being a highly effective teacher, that's based on the appraisal of that teacher through our TAD system. So those are our principals and instructional specialists and assistant principals and deans that are evaluating those staff members.
Would you say it's fair to say that not every certified teacher is an effective teacher?
Not every certified teacher is an effective teacher.
Yes.
So whether there's traditionally certified or alternative certification, that's true based on their appraisal. Some teachers can be certified through the traditional teacher aid program and still not be rated as a highly effective teacher.
Right. So I was just trying to explain that even if we have certified teachers, not necessarily are they the most effective teachers in our struggling school based on the appraisal system. Is that correct?
That's why we have to provide the necessary professional development and training for all of our teachers, not only the teachers on our struggling campuses, but teachers on our higher performing campuses also.
Yeah. Thank you. Ms. Stevens, really quick, how many, well, maybe Mrs. Dimmitt can answer this. How many teachers did not return to the IR schools after January? Is there a number or percentage?
We don't have it readily available, but we can get that for you.
Yeah, okay, because I understand that there was a dip and some teachers did not return back after the holidays in some of the IR schools. I'm not.
Well, it's not even just if you go back to the personnel report that you will approve tonight. If you'll notice from that personnel report that we discussed earlier today, it's across the district. It's not necessarily just Achieve 180 campuses. Okay. There are other campuses that people did not return after the holidays.
Yeah, I understand it, but I'm really concerned about those teachers not returning to the struggling schools more critically than the other schools that are high performing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lida. Ms. Villaseca Ocampo.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you so much for the presentation tonight. Thank you. I really do appreciate it. One of my questions pertains to page 15, percentage of students completing a dual credit enrollment course. I know that we have tremendous opportunities to accelerate this across the district. I know that we've heard some presentations about some possible expansion of this. Could we just get a brief update on any kind of strategies or plans, Madam Superintendent, about what we're doing to address this?
Trustee Flynn-Villaseca. With that point, we have been meeting with schools and also HUC and some other community college partners. We're partnered with Lone Star, San Jacinto, and also MIT. We actually have some students in Austin Community College who are part of Texas Connections. But with that, we're trying to strategize around ways to better align programs so students can matriculate seamlessly from the high schools and taking courses to a community college like a HUC or Lone Star. But keep in mind, though, and I don't know if I mentioned this, our legislative body passed a bill, Senate Bill 1092 last year, which actually limits us in what students can take. In the past, students, if they took a workforce CTE dual credit course, they could also take an academic course and vice versa. Now, as of this year, unless they're on an associate degree track or a level 1 certificate, they can no longer do that. So that's actually had a negative impact on our numbers, and that's why we actually haven't reached, I think, capacity what we could have in the past based on limitations with now state law. We've been working with HCC closely on this to try to increase opportunities for our students, but it has had a negative impact on what we can offer.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Mr. Love. Thank you. I I think that's really the only question. Other trustees have already addressed the other things that I had on the list. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Trustee Jones?
Superintendent Layton, the information that was just asked for your administration to pull together, is that kept in the regular order of HISD, or does that require us to do, you, not us, you to do something differently with what Trustee Lear asked for?
It will be a referral, and we will pull the information together to go back and see and classify it by Achieve 180 versus non-Achieve 180 campuses, just so you have a bigger picture.
Okay, and then, so I just want to be clear, you said that teachers don't come back across the district, not just Achieve 180. I heard you say that, correct?
I said, based on the report I shared with you all today, that his question was around Achieve 180 campuses, but I was saying one of the issues that we are facing as a district also is not only just the Achieve 180 campuses, but teachers not returning at other campuses across the district. They might not necessarily be an Achieve 180 campus, but they could be a campus that could easily go into IR.
And I know that a couple of things, these are just a couple of comments. I've had a number of schools in IR status, and I know that the students have very many challenges, some of which have nothing to do with academics, but other wraparound services issues. And there are a lot of teachers who think they can deal with it till they get there, and then they can't, then they don't show up. So I don't know if we can anticipate when someone gets there, they can make it handle stuff and then find out that they can. So that's one thing I want to tell you. I understand that. And then also, are we having incentives or anything to try to get the teachers at Achieve 180 campuses, and how is that working?
So we pay teachers and principals an incentive to actually work at those campuses. But we still are experiencing struggles even with the incentives to staff positions at some of our Achieve 180 campuses.
And the last thing I'm going to say is this. I heard a lot of complaints about a number of people who are leaving HISD just because of what's going on this board. I think we need to keep that in the mix as well. But thank you.
No more questions, so we're going to move on to speakers to agenda items. We have now come to the portion of our meeting. Thank you, Ms. Stevens and Dr. Latham. We have now come to the portion of our meeting where we hear from the public. We're glad you're here and look forward to hearing your views. First, we will consider speakers to agenda item before taking action on business items. Hearing of citizens will be heard at the conclusion of the business agenda. Also, those who have registered by 9:30 a.m. today may speak this evening. Copies of handout materials must have been provided to board services by 9:30 a.m. today. So that each person who has signed up to speak can be heard by the board, we ask that there be no disruptions of the meeting by members of the audience, no abusive statements or actions, no threats or confrontations, no audible expressions by the audience of approval or disapproval. We have 25 speakers registered for agenda items this evening, including speakers on multiple items. Speaker to agenda items will be limited to 2 minutes each. If a speaker has signed up to speak on multiple agenda items or to speak at the hearings of citizens and to one or more agenda items, the speaker shall have 2 minutes to consolidate his or her comments under the first item on the agenda, which he or she has registered, unless the total amount of time for the agenda item exceeds 30 minutes. If you have signed up to also speak in the hearing of citizens, please speak to the agenda item first and then address your hearing of citizens topic. We also ask that speakers stay on topic and refrain from naming individuals, especially students, as their identity is protected under law. But you may name your own child. We ask that you please speak directly into the microphone. The clock on the wall to your right and on the podium will count down your time, and we will signal when your time is up. I ask that you respect our procedures and others' speakers and end your remarks promptly when your time has expired. Colleagues, please hold questions regarding any of these items until we are ready to consider them for discussion. Our first item held for registered speakers is Agenda B1, approval for the Board of Education to appoint trustees to serve as representatives to other organizations for one or multi-year terms. Our first registered speaker, who is also registered to Agenda Item B2 in hearing of citizens, is Mr. Gary Monroe, followed by Stacy Rayon.
A lot of black people out there want me to say it for them. You're very disrespectful. You got a mariachi band out there, and it's Black History Month. I'm going to just say this, man, because it needs to be said and pull you on the carpet. You got 5 individuals up here that can't separate race from anything else. You don't care about black children. Because if you did, you would go to the legislation and you would do the same thing you did for Mexican American studies and get us African American studies. You don't want to educate black people. I got a pastor in the audience. You know, this goes all the way back to Exodus 20:21. You don't get a punishment if you don't, when you beat your slave, if you don't kill him. You're beating my children. Your inability to be quality trustees in the Houston Independent School District, and that's not all of y'all, it's 5 of y'all. You're racist. You don't go to black schools. You don't participate in anything at a black school. You put stuff on Twitter. You don't put African American children. They want me to say it, I'm going to say it. Your time here is up. You're not serving the purpose. The chaos didn't start until you 5 idiots showed up. The chaos did not start until you showed up. Whether you like me or not, your history in these videos will prove that. I am sick and tired of you disrespecting black kids, and I promise you, if I gotta pay for a recording artist to come doing Cinco de Mayo, we gonna crank up your foyer out there disrespecting my black kids with your...
Next we have Stacy Rayon. Also registered to agenda item B2, D2, H3, I3, and hearing of citizens.
I'm going to do my best to respect your policies and your request. Item B1, simply no. I think you have more than enough on your plates dealing with the HISD school board. I don't think that it's a wise decision to spread yourselves too thin. Item D2, I do think it's a great idea to go ahead and provide that on-site instruction in the jails, since we can't really seem to do anything to stem the prison pipeline, the school-to-prison pipeline. The least we can do is educate them once they get there, and maybe that will reduce recidivism. H3, sadly, you do need shooter training in the schools, just in case we do have a situation. We want to make sure that our HISD police officers are trained to deal with that. Item I3, yes, we need grant funds. The budget needs as much help as it can get. I can't see a logical reason to vote that down. That brings me to the most important agenda item, which is B2, suspension of the superintendent search. First of all, I want to remind the board that you unanimously chose Dr. Granita Lathan in April to ascend to this position. She has done nothing but what you've asked her to do and more, in spite of the fact that you've tied her hands and fought her at almost every turn. It is downright disrespectful to expect her to do a job that she has done well and ask her to keep begging for you to give her crumbs off the table. Untie her hands and let her do what she does. Trustee 2. I see y'all at the schools, even when the
Thank you.
cameras don't. Thank you.
Our next item held for registered speakers is B2, suspension of the superintendent search until after the Texas Education Agency investigations and all appeals. Per policy, BED local time allotments for one topic or agenda item shall not exceed 30 minutes. Speakers registered to speak to an item will be limited to 1 minute in order to keep within the 30-minute limit. If you're also registered for hearing the citizens, you will have 2 minutes. First, we have Mr. Robert Centeno, who is also registered as a hearing of citizens, so you will have 2 minutes.
Ms. Davila, Roberto Centeno. Okay, Ms. Santos, you were at the meeting with Ms. Davila at the Heights High School. You were taking minutes. I hope you took this down. I brought up, Ms. Dygard, who would have the sense to apply for superintendent, right? And because of the state situation. And I asked the moderator this question: how many candidates do you have? He said 12. 12. So it's not like no one's applying. Now, why don't you ask for guidance from TEA, Madam President? Ask for guidance from TEA. And promote from within. My candidate, Rick Cruz, he's in charge of innovative initiative. I think he'd be perfect. Now, concerning dysfunctional board, we all saw in the paper October 15th a trustee charging against another trustee. Shortly thereafter, that sitting trustee said on the radio, TSU radio, on the 19th, when I served on city council, I protected African American women who worked hard for the city and lost their jobs. When she was president, the same thing happened to me. She didn't do anything for me, but she did it for 2 African American women. So she confessed right there her bias. I want justice, equity. That word is applied for students, applied to teachers. I was at an inner city school doing college level work, presentation for my students. Okay? Talk about incentives. I didn't have any incentives, financial. Now, it gets worse. There were 2 sitting trustees. I'm saying the red flag. I'll continue. I'll give you either come back or fax you this information.
Thank you, Mr. Roberto Centeno. Next, we have Ms. Suzanne Monahan, followed by Zev Kappel, and you will have 1 minute.
Okay, I'll talk fast. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I just want to talk a little bit about our current interim superintendent. I've been in education for 36 years, 15 have been as a principal in this district. I want to speak to the things that I've experienced under her leadership. For the first time ever, as a principal, I received my budget for next year in January. Never before have we had that. She has a great understanding of what shared leadership is about. She doesn't lead from the top up. She's the top down all the way, and she listens to what everybody has to say. She knows her schools, and she knows what's going on in the schools. She's visible, she's available, she supports us and lets us lead our campus. Something as simple as that we haven't seen before from superintendents is that she actually attends the principal meetings each month and speaks to her principals. It was amazing to me that I would come to principals meetings and we would never see the superintendent because they had to be out of town on that day.
Thank you. Next, we have Zev Kappel. You will have 1 minute, followed by Dr. James Douglas, who is also registered as hearing of citizens, so you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam President and board members. The Houston Federation of Teachers is opposed to suspending the search for the superintendent. We've maintained our position since the resignation of Richard Carranza that the HISD board members should focus their attention on identifying a permanent superintendent. Be reminded that this organization also supported the appointment of Dr. Lathan as the interim superintendent, but like anyone else expected, she would need to compete in a fair forum for the permanent position. With all the very reasons why someone may not apply, we must also consider the 215,000 reasons they would. Despite our difficulties, we are still the largest and one of the most influential districts in the state. We have amazing programs and a strong record of success, even though there is much to improve. You have a responsibility to maintain the work moving forward. Choosing the next leader is one of the most important responsibilities we collectively elected you to accomplish. We've all been in limbo long enough, and it isn't best practice to continue without a permanent decision being made this long.
Thank you. Dr. James Douglas, who's also registered as hearing of citizens, and followed by Mr. Sam Smith. You will have 2 minutes.
Good evening. I am James Douglas, President of Houston Branch of the NAACP. I'm here to speak on the agenda item, and the agenda item is whether or not you ought to suspend the search. I wake up early in the morning, and a lot of times I turn on sports radio, and a lot of times I hear fishing reports. And the reporter will say, now is not a good day to fish, because the fish are not biting. I grew up in Houston, but I used to visit my grandfather on the farm. I wake up some mornings and say, Granddaddy, we're going fishing today? He said, no. I'm like, why? He said, because the fish are not biting today. It's a waste of time. Now, you heard your own consultants say, people are asking questions. We might think the United States is a huge country, but believe me, public education is not as large as we think it is. The people you want to hire, they know us. You heard your consultants say, they know what's going on at HISD. The people, you just heard the President of the Teachers Union say, there are a lot of people out there who want this job. Yeah, but I guarantee you there are not a lot of good people that want this job. And we need somebody good to come to HISD. If I'm a good superintendent and I look at what's happening in HISD now, I'm not applying. So if we're really serious about our kids, we want to make sure that we fish when the fish are biting. We can throw the water. You know, I remember once I got offered a job in D.C. to be the dean of a law school, and I turned it down because they weren't offering enough money. And I said to them, take this job, but that won't be good.
Thank you. Mr. Sam Smith, followed by Monica Cepeda. Mr. Sam Smith? Okay, we're going to move on to Ms. Monica Cepeda. Followed by Dr. Pamela J. Boulevard.
May I clarify that I have 2 minutes because I was citizen as well?
Yes, you have hearing of citizens. Yes, you do.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate all of you trustees, and I have great respect for all of you. First of all, I have some very serious concerns regarding the process of the search, not so much the process itself, because I know that we voted to find one or whatever. I regret that Mr. Carranza left us in turmoil. Shortly after his departure, all hell broke loose on the board. As an exemplary educator, I have not been able to make a meeting until now. I'm always tutoring. Ms. Latham, I really appreciate you filling in. You're doing a great job under these hectic and volatile circumstances. This leads me to some very grave concerns, primarily related to the professionalism of board members. I'm sorry to say, it's lacking. I've never ever seen so much infighting on any board. Y'all are fighting like schoolyard bullies. I teach middle school, and what I've seen from this board, whether it's been in the newspaper, on television, it's embarrassing. I'm sorry. I'm a great educator. I teach black, brown, Chinese, white, you name it. I love all my babies. And I can't believe what I've seen. It's atrocious. I realize that this investigation is vital to the board's transparency and accountability. However, in my opinion, there are other board members not acting in a professional manner. I'm very concerned that this behavior is tolerated. Like things on Facebook. For example, Trustee Jones has had her soap opera going on as the board turns, attacking some of her colleagues. Some of this can be perceived as defamation of character. It is big time. Go and take a look. It's public, or it's been public for a while. I have never seen, I hope that our new board member or that our new superintendent, Ms. Latham, if that be you, please take a look at that. We need the utmost professionalism of every single board member. Every single board member. If we're to fire 1 or 2 or 3 of them, Ms. Latham, start brand new, get a whole new slate of board members, please.
Thank you. Dr. Pamela J. Bogolan, followed by Sister Mama Sonia. Dr. Pamela?
Wow.
You have 2 minutes because you're signed up for here in the Citizen Search.
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure where to start. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. And I hope we can all learn to love one another. I'm not sure. I'm definitely not. I'm in support of suspending the search currently, not because of what the consultant said, but because y'all really got to get together. Not a single person up there has not made a misstep. There should be no tribalism. You shouldn't be following somebody that was here a long time ago when an even more questionable board was present. We shouldn't be calling each other names because we didn't when an even more racist board was present. I stood here and saw that. So we need to all stop, put a pause, put a pin, and just learn to look at the real issues. A new superintendent is not your problem. Your problem is TEA. Your problem is Governor Abbott. Your problem is anything that Republicans can currently do to disrupt the level of non-Republican behavior in Harris County. That's what's going on. Why does the Harris County treasurer have an opinion suddenly about education in HISD? He hadn't had an opinion all this time. There is a plot afoot. Stop playing in the sandbox. Let it go. Get together and take on TEA. Those are the people you need to be fighting. Take all that energy you got pent up, all that anger, and point it in the right direction. You need to do that, and you need to do it now. And you need to stop questioning Ms. Latham.
Thank you. Sister Mama Sonia, followed by Ms. Coretta Creeks.
Sister Mama's not here.
Okay, thank you. Coretta Creeks, followed by Ms. Diane Olmos Guzman. Okay, so Diane Olmos Guzman. Okay. Followed by Keith Downey. You will have 1 minute, Ms. Guzman.
Good evening, Board, Superintendent. I'm here to speak against Agenda Item B2 because I'm also here representing the League of United Latin American Citizens as a member of Council 402, the Education Council, which is about equity, parity, and justice. We need to continue with the superintendent search as a matter of equity. It is a matter of fairness for all. And we need to let go of the biasness against the Mexican American community and learn to work together as people. We are humble people, we are law-abiding people, and we certainly respect this board and everything that HISD stands for. And let TEA do their job, but don't let it hinder the superintendent.
Thank you. Keith Downey, followed by Hugo Mojica. You will have 1 minute.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Keith Downey. I'm president, chairman of the Kashmir Feeder Pattern Community Council. 7 schools of the Kashmir Feeder Pattern that come together every month and give a report to the community. Been doing so for 3 years. My point is, when we look for a candidate that's going to help our children, if I have to Google where Lockwood Drive is, I don't know enough about that community to try to help those children. If I have to come into Houston and Google where a major artery is in a community, I don't know enough about that community. We have a lady is sitting in that chair. She has a proven track record. This is not about race. This is about your professionalism. She has a proven track record of from 55, I think it's more than that, but from 55 down to 4. I don't think you'll find anybody in America with a better resume than. He's the best candidate for the job, and I speak on behalf of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Hugo Mujica, followed by Cristal Womack. You will have 1 minute, Mr. Mujica.
Sure. Good evening, Madam President and board members. Thank you, first of all, for your service. Sometimes you're not thanked enough for all what you do. Whether you're dysfunctional or not, that's a different story, but I want to thank you for your service. I'm here to speak on behalf of against B2 because I think our community it's looking for leadership from this board to move forward, to find a permanent leader that's going to move our community forward. We've been talking about equity in public education for years. This board has been talking about this for years, but the same equity still exists in our communities. If you go out to the different economic challenged areas in our community, you'll see the schools are where the wealth is and where the non-wealth is. I graduated from Jeff Davis, not Northside High School, and that school has been neglected for far too long, and that's because prior boards have.
Thank you. Dr. Cristal Womack, followed by Dr. Carolyn Evans-Shabazz. You will have 1 minute, Dr. Womack.
Hi, thank you. Please continue the soup search. Bonus if y'all can find us somebody with Garanza's vision. He was actively addressing disparities, and that seems to have fallen by the wayside. So please vote against agenda item B2, which would stall the search for a new superintendent. Vote against divisiveness, against pettiness, and against selling all of our children out because of egos. I also encourage humane treatment of Latinos on this board. We are human beings deserving of being treated with dignity. Latinos are often targeted for poor treatment in leadership positions and not welcomed in these spaces, even when we're elected to these spaces. If it is difficult to get past personal feelings, consider that these folks are representing many more people and many disenfranchised individuals that deserve your respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Carolyn Evans-Shabazz, followed by James Dixon. Okay. Mr. James Dixon, followed by Daniel Santos. You will have 1 minute.
I honor each of you tonight. Let me simply say very quickly, I am in support of item 2 in suspending the search until the investigation is concluded. That's not disrespectful of any particular person, but it's respectful of the law. And so I would urge that the board would do that. I would also like to say that those of persons who are, like myself, touting Dr. Lathan as the most viable candidate, it is not about race, it's results. 55 schools on the IR list down to 4, that's results. That's not race, that's not black, that's not white. And many of those schools that were failing, there were kids of all ethnic groups and races. So let's understand that when she does a good job, or anyone does a good job for HISD, it's for all the children in it. I would like to urge the board to consider what is absolutely rational, reasonable, and professional. And we have a winner here, 55-4. Let the number.
Thank you, Bishop Dixon. Next, we have Daniel Santos, followed by Michael Hicks. Mr. Santos, you will have 1 minute.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Daniel Santos, a 12-year veteran teacher of Navarro Middle School and two-time Campus Teacher of the Year. This evening, I rise to speak against item B2. As a veteran teacher, I understand and have witnessed firsthand the negative impact that instability brings to a community, to a school, to a district when irresponsible decisions are made without authentic input from all stakeholders. We mustn't allow mendacity to feed a manufactured crisis or slander the reputations of well-meaning people. The time is now to move forward. I and thousands of teachers oppose the suspension of the superintendent search because we have all been in limbo long enough. Our community deserves better. The time is now to unite for the common good. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Hicks, followed by Alfonso Maldonado. Mr. Hicks, okay, on to Mr. Alfonso Maldonado, followed by CJ Alves. Mr. Maldonado, you will have 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, board members, Dr. Latham. My name is Alfonso Maldonado. I am the District Director for the League of United Latin American Citizens, commonly known as LULAC, the oldest and largest Hispanic civil rights organization in the country. On behalf of the League and its members, I'm here to respectfully request that the board not support item B2 and to encourage the trustees to continue this search. It's been almost a year without a permanent superintendent, and HISD is in paramount need of one. And the suspension of the search will discourage interested members from applying and deprive our district of selecting the best available candidate. LULAC believes that a TA investigation should neither inhibit nor prohibit the search process. It is hoped that by the time the investigation concludes, the board will be in a position to select its candidate and offer it to one who is ready and willing to immediately serve our students. In conclusion, LULAC overwhelmingly supports the continuation of the superintendent search for the benefit of all HISD students and the community at large. We stand ready and willing to support the board in this endeavor. Thank you.
CJ Alves, followed by Alex Villegas. Okay. Alex Villegas, followed by Sean Rushing. Mr. Villegas, you will have 1 minute.
Hi. Good evening. As a parent and as a father and as a business owner, I have two daughters that I'm raising. They're 9 and 10 years old here in the Houston area. I'm here to speak against B2, and I do not want us to suspend the search. And so please continue the search. I personally have greatly benefited from public education and attended public university as well. So I just want to let the board know at this time, please also take into consideration the behavior we have among yourselves. We are role models for our children, and what happens here is very public, and it's talked about. It's talked about in our schools, it's talked about in our churches, it's talked about in our community, meetings and so forth. So it's my expectation that we can definitely figure out how to facilitate and how to address some of the differences that y'all have with each other. Thank you. And another thing I just want to say, in this search, please give consideration. Due consideration to an internal candidate. This search, looking for somebody from maybe a disparate community.
Sean Rushing. Sean Rushing. Okay, that concludes our hearing citizens for that item. Our next item held for registered speakers is agenda item D1, adoption of recommended instructional materials for school year 2019 and 2020. Our speakers for that item is Dr. James Troutman. You're also registered for hearing the citizens.
Thank you. Esteemed board members, Madam President, Dr. Latham, first of all, happy Valentine's Day. I want to thank all of you for volunteering your time to the children of Houston, because we all know that this is a volunteer position which you all occupy. Additionally, I want to thank you for the opportunity to share with you my concern regarding the adoption of handwriting without tears for the Houston Independent School District, board item D1. This change from the gold standard of Zahner-Bloser will have a huge impact on 3 different groups of your constituents. Most importantly, the students. There are over 100,000 students who are being impacted by the new TEKS, which take effect next year, in grades K through 5. Here's one example of kindergarten and first grade students who will have to learn to print the manuscript letter B. According to Zahner-Bloser, the gold standard of instruction on making lowercase b, you start at the headline, pull down straight, push up and circle forward, all the way around. This is beneficial for all students, especially for students with dyslexia. Now here's a description from handwriting without tears for making the manuscript letter B. Dive down, swim up, and over, around, bump, and imagine for a moment that you are a second language learner trying to figure out what that language means. The Zahner-Bloser instructional language is appropriate for all students, and especially for our English language learners. Have you seen the TEKS for handwriting? They're out for next school year. Students in second grade are going to be responsible for math.
Thank you, Dr. Trump. Our final item held for registered speakers is Agenda K1, Proposed Revisions to Board Policy BQ Local Planning and Decision-Making Process, Campus Level, second reading. Patrice Jones, who is also registered for hearing the citizens.
Thank you so much for even presenting these items tonight. I stand here on behalf of the special ed community in support of K1. I just want to say thank you for just participating in showing accountability to the SPED community. I'm in District 2, and my kids actually go to school in District 8. One of the things that we're talking about is the fact that this item represents our children's basic rights as citizens in this great country. My oldest child recently completed a class project in which he deemed the Boston Tea Party as the single most important event in American history. Coincidentally, as of today, our district has yet to learn or apply the very concept of no taxation without representation. I'm here to affirm that the SPED community will not rest until our children are no longer just an afterthought in the eyes of this district. In a district where new skills are still being built without any regard or for designated classroom space for our SPED kids. Why? Because some SDMCs that aid in the advisory of the building plan simply forget sometimes, forcing students to be temporarily misplaced or taught in maintenance workspaces without so much as a window in sight. In the district where my own child and many others were unfortunately left out of field trips and things alike because persons responsible for planning them simply forgot to include the SPED kids. We will not be silent. Trustees and the SPED community, we want to thank you, but we are asking that you vote for inclusion on tonight. And thank you so much for even bringing it to the table in the first place.
Thank you. Thank you. That concludes our speakers for agenda items. Next, we will have consideration of the agenda. We have heard all speakers to agenda items. We are now ready to move on to the business of agenda. For the record, let it be reflected that agenda items B1, B2, K4, K5, and K6, and attachments to items K4 and K5 and K6 were added after the agenda was printed. Agenda item D2 and K2 and attachments to H4, I2, I3, and K2 were revised. Agenda items K4 and K5 and K6 were withdrawn. Board policy requires trustees to excuse themselves and abstain for all decisions and votes pertaining to contracts that might involve a conflict of interest. As defined in board policy BBFA local, a conflict of interest is any circumstances that could cast doubt on a trustee's ability to act with total objectivity with regards to the district's interest. Starting with the trustee to my far right, then continuing on to my left, would each trustee state any agenda items he or she wants held for separate discussion and also state any agenda item for which the trustee will abstain on the basis of conflict of interest requirements, which will also be held for separate discussions. Trustee Skiller-Jones, do you have any items you wish to hold for discussion or to abstain from?
B2 for hold B2. And I work for the county, so I have to abstain from D2 and H3.
Thank you. Dr. Lira?
No abstentions. We can hold D1.
Dr. Sung? Trustee Sung.
No abstentions, and please hold K1.
Trustee Santos?
No abstentions and none.
Trustee Villaseca?
No abstentions, and item D1, Dr. Lear already said K2.
Trustee Jones?
None and none.
Trustee Dygard?
So the ones I'd like to speak to have already been held, but I'd like to respectfully request if we could move K2 for discussion after B2, please.
K2 to B2. Okay, we'll have to have a motion when we, to move it out of order, we'll have to have a motion in order for us to.
Can I make a motion to do that?
You can. Let me just find out with Ms. Adams, if Ms. Adams is going to hold or have any abstentions. No, I think she said, which one did you want to move out of order? K2.
Which is going to come right after.
Yes, she wants to do K2 first.
No, I want to do K2 after B2, please.
There's a D item. There's a D1 item.
Yeah.
There's a D1 item.
So move K2 between B2 and D1.
Yes. Yes, so after B2.
Yes.
Okay, so can you state your motion?
I'd like to move that we move item K2 for discussion after item B2 and before D1.
Okay, all right, I've just gotten legal advice. Is there any objection to moving those items? Otherwise, we don't have to vote on it. No? Okay, thank you. So we don't have to vote on it. I apologize. All right, so we have then B2, K2, and D1.
And then K1.
Oh, I don't have any items to hold or abstention. B2, K2, D1, and K1. All right. Oh, no, it's been moved. That concludes today's board agenda. We are now ready to proceed with the hearing of citizens. Any citizen who desires to appear before the Board of Education should have registered and filed an application with Board Services by 9:30 a.m. today. The deadline to submit handouts materials was also at that time. I'd like to remind speakers that when addressing the board, please stay on topic and refrain from naming individuals, especially students, as they are protected under the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. However, naming your own child is permissible in the course of stating your concerns. Please understand that this is a public forum, does not allow for dialogues with board members. The board cannot deliberate or respond directly to a speaker in this format. The clock on the wall to your right will count down your time and will signal when your time is up. We have 13 registered hearing of citizens. Speakers during the hearing of citizens shall be limited to 1 minute each and cannot pass his or her time to another speaker. I ask that you please respect our procedures and that other speakers end your remarks promptly when your time has expired. Please note, if you register to speak on an agenda item and hearing the citizens, your name will not be called at this time since you had the opportunity to make your remarks during the speakers to agenda item. Our first speaker is Wade Old Jr., followed by Heather Coleman, followed by Camelia Alfaro Rivera. So is Wade not here? Okay, so is Heather? You're Camila. So is Heather not here? Okay, so Camila, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. My name is Camila Rivera. I'm a senior at Sterling Aviation Early College High School. Before coming to Sterling, I attended Yes Prep West, which is very competitive, but did not, in my opinion, prepare me for my career I desired. They focus on more of a college standard, not a career. I'm a student in Aviation Magnet Program and a student ambassador. I hope one day to become a commercial pilot under Dr. Layton's leadership. As an intern and superintendent, I have been afforded many opportunities that I am thankful for. Over the summer, I worked as an intern at Hobby Airport, which was a priceless experience. My school has teachers and staff who care about the students, and I am proud to be a Sterling Raider. I'm in support of Dr. Layton's being named as a permanent superintendent of Houston ISD.
Thank you. So has Wade returned? All right, just signal me when I know he's been sitting there and we want to hear our students first, and that's the reason we intentionally put them in the beginning. So, Cameron Mosley? Not here, okay. Jesse Woods? Followed by Jyoti Malhan.
good afternoon, or good night. Madam President and the distinguished board members, to my District 2 trustee, and to our esteemed interim superintendent. As a citizen, I can say with great pride that the effects of our interim superintendent leadership can be seen, heard, and felt all through the community. From what I've seen through television and social media, the special care and time that she takes to visit our campuses to provide support to not only parents but also to teachers, students, and community members is unparalleled by any superintendent that I have seen in my many years of serving in the community. It is my firm belief and fervent hope that we look no farther in the quest for superintendent than with the distinguished interim superintendent. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Wade Alt Jr.? Here we go. Good.
My bad.
No, we know you had to take a break.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, go.
Been in here for like 2 hours, and I perfectly leave when they call my name. All right. Okay. Hi, nice to meet you all. My name is Wade Ald. I'm a senior at Rashaw Sterling Aviation Early College. Since attending Sterling, I've been presented with many opportunities. In the past year, since seeing Dr. Lathan serve as the interim superintendent, I've had more opportunities than ever before to expand my education and learn new knowledge. At my school, I'm a member of the Magnet Program, the Flight Program, and the Student Ambassador Organization. There's a lot more than that. During my 7th and 8th periods, I'm actually able to go out to Pearland Regional Airport and fly planes. This is something that has been available to me this school year and something I've only seen under Dr. Lathan's leadership. Now, this is my experience and my opinion, but do know that I echo many students and faculty at my school who have also seen the fundamental changes taken under the leadership of Dr. Lathan. For these reasons and more, I urge for your support in making Dr. Lathan the permanent superintendent of HISD.
Thank you. Next we have Joyti Malhan. And I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that correctly.
No, that was great. Good evening, Board President Davila, trustees, and Superintendent Dr. Lathan. I just want to take this opportunity to thank Superintendent Dr. Lathan for all the support and resources at the Baylor College of Medicine Academy and James D. Ryan Middle School. We have a counselor this year and a reading intervention teacher, and this has definitely impacted the social and emotional well-being as well as the academic outcomes of our young middle schoolers. In addition, the opportunity for me personally to be a part of the Magnet Program Evaluation and Review Committee for the last 2 years has allowed me not only to lend my voice, but also learn about the role of school choice in our school district and some of the inequities in our east and north areas. And so I thank you for all the support and all the opportunities to learn, to lead, and to advocate for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Lloyd Ford. Kenneth Williams.
President Davila, Dr. Lathan, and board members, my name is Kenneth Williams, and I'm a member of the SDMC at Cashmere High School. I just wanted to take this opportunity to say that I definitely agree with the students that were just here, and I've had an opportunity to talk to not only community folks, but to teachers and other principals from across the district. And what they say is that they like Dr. Lathan. This is what they say. I mean, I've talked to them. I work on several different committees, and so they talk about her willingness to use best practices, her willingness to foster collaboration between campuses so that people can work on problems not just in silos, but for the good of the district. So I'm saying that.
Thank you. Mr. Hugh German Wilson, followed by Carlotta Brown. Miss Hugh German Wilson. Thank you. Huey, thank you.
Good evening, President Davila, Dr. Lathan, other trustees. My name is Huey German Wilson, and I am a Kashmir alum, a lifelong community member, a member of the Kashmir SDMC. I've written you all at some point or another, and I've addressed this body numerous times to bring solutions to the issues that plague the schools in the Kashmir feeder pattern, and today is no different. This board, which should be about the business of the policy for the students of Houston ISD, is not fulfilling its obligation to the 200,000 students of this city. You have not hired a superintendent of schools. The interim superintendent of schools, Dr. Granito Lathan, is busy about our students' business. 62 schools have come off IR under her watch and are on their way. The schools are busy. All the schools in the district are busy about creating innovative systems to instruct students.
I know.
In support of Dr. Lathan. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Carlotta Brown, followed by Mei Ling.
Good evening, trustees, Superintendent Latham, and guests. I come to you as a constituent, a taxpayer, and as a parent of an HISD student. I'm a graduate of an HISD school, and I'm a proud native Houstonian, so I have seen a lot. It is very important to observe, analyze, and take stock about what's most important in HISD. It is the children. All children of HISD. Dr. Lathan has shown her strength, fortitude, tenacity, perseverance, but most of all, she has shown she has courage because she is moving HISD forward, not taking the district backwards. Hence, she is thinking about all children. She has shown herself to be a proven leader. It's evident that as its leaders, this is not a stop on her way to her next job or a mark on her resume for her next position, for which we have all seen so many do in the past as they matriculate in, go through, and leave out. It is very important to know that she is not on a tour of duty. She is a commander-in-chief. We need her as...
Thank you. Ms. Mei Ling, followed by Travis. Miles. I keep... You may begin.
Okay. Good evening, board members. Andrew is my son. He's a senior at Blair High School. I'm here today to tell you about HSD failed to correct his grade he earned with his hard work. Andrew had a rare disease that cost him 2 months of school in 2017. Due to his illness, Andrew was enrolled in the federal 504 protection plan. We were told this plan would guarantee my son the opportunity to finish his missed classes. Andrew finished his classes in his best and had to take an incomplete grade 31 for Chinese 3B. Andrew had a repeated attempt to schedule a final test, but the teacher failed to schedule in time. The teacher finally offered a make-up exam in August 2018, 15 months after. Andrew made a final grade 85, but the school didn't accept this grade, citing HISD policy. So this grade was the difference between making and missing the admission to UT Austin Andrew Stream School. Today to help us look into this matter and bring this happen to
Thank you, Ms. May. Yes. Yep. Travis Miles, and I'm going to apologize because I can't say.
Yeah, it's Koutsubos.
Koutsubos,
yeah,
Miles.
no one can pronounce that name. Good evening, Board and Superintendent Latham. It is heartening to hear the Board come together over the issue of spending more time on student outcomes. I hope that it also dedicates more resources and programming to improving student SAT scores. I come from KIPP, where I previously taught, and I specialized in college writing and reading readiness and ACT growth. Performance on these tests is critical for entrance into American higher education, specifically schools that have high graduation rates for underrepresented minority students. These tests also, from my experience, enhance critical thinking, and they are very useful diagnostic tools for identifying weaknesses in student writing mechanics. Our students' Latino population and Black population scores are well below the national average, and that is unacceptable because a college degree means the difference between $1 million and not, and 7.
Thank you. Mr. Ramiro Fonseca, followed by Sean Rushing.
Good evening, trustees, Madam Superintendent. I'm here to talk about a good thing. My name is Ramiro Fonseca, and I'm the Community Engagement Manager with Project Grad Houston and a proud resident of District 3. So the good thing, I also have the distinct pleasure of convening a monthly meeting of community partners in the near North Side. This is the North Side Education Coalition. It's supported by Capital One in the Greater North Side, which includes our District 1 schools, the Greater North Side school feeder patterns. The Northside Coalition focuses on improving the educational system and providing access to support services and programs that contribute our youth's lifelong success from cradle to career. We have community partners, organizations that come together and form partnerships. I want to commend you for the wraparound specialists,
Thank you, Mr. Fonseca. Sean Rushing.
I'm a parent who has graduated 3 children in HISD, and they're successful today. And me and my husband are both graduates as well. I would just like to say to Dr. Grenita Lathan that over the time I have evolved to understand what it takes to be over a district, and I've also evolved to understand that no matter how dysfunctional the board is, we have a district and a team at Hattie Mae White that is leading to make sure that our children are making better choices. So I want to thank her for the leadership and the ability to continue to come into the communities and be transparent with us, because when all this was going on with other superintendents, I always wondered, where are the superintendents? But when I go to community meetings now, I see her. That does not mean that I agree with everything that she's doing. It just means that I appreciate the transparency and the autonomy to be able to share with a superintendent as thank you, and I hope that you all consider that when you're making whatever choice you make.
Thank you. Next item held for discussion is K2. May I have a motion?
So moved. Is there a second? Second.
K2. Ms. Dygard, I think it's one that you...
I don't have any comments other than, I'm glad to see that we're finally making this commitment and doing this work. It says it's on. So just talk louder. I'm really glad that we are finally making a commitment to do this work, to focus on student outcomes. It's long overdue.
Ms. Sung?
I'd just like to note that this is a board self-constraint. So here in the way that it's written as one among 5 constraints. And of course we have 4 superintendent constraints. This is what I hope is just first of board self-constraints. So it's something we can fix for second reading, I suppose. Thank you.
Ms. Feliceca Ocampo?
Thank you. Again, I'm very pleased that this board constraint is here on the agenda. I know that we have received several pieces of data indicating how much time we don't spend on student outcomes, and I know that moving forward with this indicates that we're going to be committed to spending more time, and I'm really encouraged to have continued conversation with my colleagues around restructuring meetings so that we can continue to move towards increase student outcome conversations during our board meetings.
Dr. Lira?
Thank you, Madam President and Madam Superintendent. This item has really been a great item. They've been working in our policy committee. We hear a lot the word equity and equity and equity, but this actually is an attempt to define equity for our district and to have a unified mission in terms of policy. It was previously kind of fragmented, but we've been working together to move forward with this, and hopefully we were able to accomplish this goal. Thank you.
Dr. Latham, did you have a comment?
Yes. I want to just remind the board members of the concerns that I shared on Saturday at the board retreat. Page 3, actually page 2 of 12 and 3 of 12, that these 13 goals adds additional 13. Oh, did I look the wrong one?
Yeah,
This copy is not marked. Okay, I'm like, thank you. Okay, good.
Oh, no, we listened.
Okay.
They're gone. They're gone.
My book wasn't correct. Okay.
Yeah, someone didn't update your book.
All right.
So that's what when I was looking at yours.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute.
No, we heard you.
Okay.
So thank you. Ms. Adams.
Thank you so much. I just want to put an emphasis on constraint number 1. The board shall not spend no more than 50% of its time on non-student outcomes related discussion. But in order for us to get there as a board, there are going to be some things as a board that we're going to have to cut out. Meaning, we're going to have to decide about what we're going to do with hearing of citizens on board meeting day. We can move those to agenda night. When you decide how many minutes that they would speak on agenda item, you notice tonight on some of our items that were given 2 and 3 minutes, even though the agenda item was listed, it still didn't speak on the agenda item. They spoke on whatever their feelings were at that particular time. So we're going to have to put in the work, and that's like I said on Saturday, when we have to do this, and then there are going to be some things that your constituency is not going to agree with, don't back down if this is what your true constraint is going to be. Meaning, if we're going to cut out hearing the citizens and move them so we can do the work of the board, then we're going to have to do that. So if it's here, that means we're going to have to adhere to what our own policy states. Because if not, I'm going to be the first one to say that you voted on the policy committee brought it forward, so that means if you brought it forward, that means you agree on it. Now we just have to put in the work that's going to allow us to get here. And that means cutting some of our time out on meeting night, board meeting night. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Trustee Adams. Ms. Dygar.
I do have a question. How do we hold ourselves accountable to this? Like all of the other constraints and progress measures hold the superintendent accountable. How do we plan to hold ourselves accountable to this?
So this is actually going to go back to the board policy committee to talk about everything else. We're going to fill in the gaps. So at the retreat, we talked about voting on the 50%.
Oh, no. I don't mean just the how, but what if we don't do the how? Like this is the what. And we can put anything we want in policy that says this is how we're going to restructure ourselves to get to this 50%. But if we don't actually do that work, if we actually aren't at 50% by April, what's the accountability for us?
Again, that is actually going to come to the policy committee, which I think you're going to be on. And so those are the things that you all will be discussing so that we can be held accountable for.
Okay.
Ms. Sung?
Yeah, so the way the progress measure is written, the constraint progress measure is written, this is looking at each quarter, right? So from April to June, right, we track time, and the good thing is we already measure this, right? So we already track our own time usage, and then if we had a meeting in July, I guess it would be in August, right? We can present our own progress measure the same way we do, we look at the others. So I think we need to add to our monitoring calendar our self-constraint monitoring, and so we can see in August how we did, right? And so that's the accountability piece, is we are saying at a public meeting, this is what we said we would do and this is how we're doing. Just like we did for the goals and the constraints tonight. So.
Thank you, Ms. Sung. I will speak to this agenda, and I say that because I want the timer to start when I start talking. Thank you. I want to thank my colleagues. We had a retreat this weekend, and we talked about this constraint and really having the discussion on student outcomes. It wasn't very surprising, but it was a bit shocking to find out that on a monthly basis, we only dedicate 7%, I think it was, 9%. 9% of our conversations are on student outcome, and the goal is 50%. I agree with Trustee Adams. There are things that are going to have to be taken out. There are things that we are going to have to limit ourselves and our constituency, but the conversations around this table have to be about student outcomes because that is what our public expects from us. So thank you so much. And with that, I'm going to remind you all, and I think this was a good suggestion by Trustee Jones, that you submit any suggestions that you'd like to be added. Like I heard Trustee Adams again talk about moving our hearing of citizens or hearing to agenda items to another day versus board meetings. Please submit those because the policy committee is going to be meeting. Trustee Jones has submitted hers since Saturday, but she's the only one that has submitted her homework. So I just want to remind everybody that in order for us to be inclusive, because we don't want to be meeting all the time because that takes away from student outcomes, that you submit your recommendations or requests or concerns directly to me, and then we will forward them to the Board Policy Committee. Thank you. It's time to vote on this item. Nine, 4-0 against, and 0 abstentions. We will now move on to D1.
Are you feeling better? Okay. We just done. Okay.
Dr. Lita?
Yes, I just wanted to discuss they got the 3-minute thing up there, the 3-minute timer. The adoption of material. It's just a pretty hefty contract here for $22 million. I'm also wanted to talk about the cursive writing, K5 handwriting, English and Spanish without tears. I really enjoyed cursive writing when I was young, and I really, I'm amazed as to folks who don't have this wonderful skill, but I think cursive writing is like our American calligraphy, and it's really important to be able to write cursively. And I'm not sure if this company without tears is going to be as robust in rigor, if it's going to be, Madam Superintendent, if it's going to be as strong enough to prepare our students for the STAR test in 5th grade. I need some more information on that because I want a rigorous product.
So before we do that, Dr. Latham, you were correct. I didn't ask for a motion for K1, so I'm going to ask for a motion now. Is there a motion for K1?
K1, 2.
Oh, I'm sorry. D1?
So moved.
Second? Okay. Dr. Latham, you may proceed. Sorry about that. You were correct.
Ms. Wolf, if you would come up and discuss the process as it relates to the selection of the recommendation.
Good evening, President, trustees, Superintendent Latham. Yeah, the process is fairly rigorous to go through the committees. It's also TEA approved materials. Our Office of Special Populations and our special education colleagues review the materials. The rubric that's used by the committees is pretty robust and looks for very specific alignment pieces and considerations for special populations. The committee, hands down, felt that it was a unanimous decision, that they felt like it offered actually more rigor than the previous resource.
Does that conclude your question? Okay. Ms. Sung?
So, Dr. Lita, you mentioned cursive. So is there a concern as to whether, I didn't realize cursive is actually still a requirement for our students. Okay, so it's coming back. And so then your concern is that this does not cover that?
That it's more limited in scope and whether or not it's going to prepare our students for the STAR.
Okay.
Because there's going to be, I believe, some fonts in the future where they'll be able to identify cursive writing to students. Is that correct, Ms. Ford?
I didn't hear your full question, but yes, cursive is a state concern for second grade.
Right. I know that the state just adopted the curriculum with cursive writing, but is that going to be a component in the STAR test in a few years on the STAR? And if so, does this curriculum match the preparation for the students to be successful, all students? Is it aligned with the curriculum for passing the STAR?
Well, there are vertical alignments throughout the curriculum, and this is aligned to the standards. In fact, to be approved through TEA has to meet 100%. So they've signed off. Again, the committees have signed off, and it's part of the vertical progression that starts early on for cursive and moves on through elementary.
Are fifth grade students going to be required to read a prompt in cursive writing? No? Okay.
No.
No? Okay.
Our elementary ELA director back here.
Okay. I'm just checking. All right, thank you. All right.
And they will be required to write on the assessment.
Okay. All right, thank you. I was just going to see if we're properly preparing to the alignment for our students to be successful, student outcome with cursive as a new component adopted by the state.
I'm sorry.
You need to come up front. You can't yell from the audience. Come up front if you're going to participate. You can't be back there.
They're not required to write in cursive. They won't have to read something in cursive on the standardized assessment.
And the standard actually for fourth grade is that they're able to print and write in cursive legibly. So that won't be a part of the assessment per se. The handwriting assessment.
So the fourth grade writing STAR, are they going to write in cursive or manuscript?
They are not required to do either one on what the state gives us to know, not for writing.
I just wanted it for clarification to make sure.
Yes.
I'm not sure that our students are correctly going the pathway with the tools they need.
Well, I think we need to understand that the cursive standard was never removed. It's just that it hadn't been really taught. It's supposed to be taught starting in third grade. They moved it down to second. But it's not an assessed standard. Yes.
Yes.
For SATs is a life skill.
It is a life skill, yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Wolf. Thank you. I want to be able to see more cursive writing and handwriting. Thank you.
Since we're on instructional materials, though, I'm going to take the liberty to introduce our new elementary officer for curriculum, Ms. Maggie Gardiev. If you would just stand and be recognized, formerly a school improvement officer, and prior to that time, a principal in the district. So, welcome to Maggie.
After the meeting, Ms. Villaseca Ocampo.
Thank you so much. So I just have another question about the recommendation that's being brought forward by the district for the handwriting deal. We heard a hearing of citizen speaker earlier talk a little bit about whether, maybe questioning whether or not this is the most ideal program as far as servicing ELs in our district, and making sure that, he talked about the language and the language that's used versus the Zahner Blozer versus the handwriting without tears curriculum. So I'm just curious to hear a little bit more about that, especially given some of the data that we discussed at the beginning of this meeting.
Certainly. So the committee was made up with teachers of various areas across the district. But like I mentioned before, after the committees had come to an agreement on what they were going to recommend, we also looped in our Office of Special Populations and our leaders in those areas to take a look. So it was checked throughout the committees, but also kind of signed off from what we had seen of the materials, and they did give us full materials to try. Teachers piloted in their classrooms with students and gave feedback after they tried lessons in the classroom.
Just wanted to confirm, this is a 10-year adoption?
8 years.
8 year. Oh.
That's, okay. No more questions from my colleagues. Please vote. Seven for, 0 against, and 0 abstentions. And 2 absent. May I have a motion for K1? Is there a second? Second. Actually, we're on K1, and then I haven't forgot your D2. Ms. Sung?
I'd like to thank everybody who served on the board's Special Education Ad Hoc Committee, which my colleague, Trustee Adams, appointed to me to in 2017 when I first came onto this board and knew very little about special education. I want to thank the work that everybody on that committee, including some members in this room today. One of the recommendations that came out of that work was this change in policy. And so, as we said in 2017 in the resolution this board passed, that we would commit to being more inclusive, right? This is a step in policy to say that whenever we're sitting around tables to make decisions about children, students with disabilities will be considered, and that's important that that happens at each school too, at the site-based decision-making committees. At a gender review before our previous meeting, when we had first reading, we had discussed some of this language, and there was some language that would clarify, I think, the final sentence on page 2 of the policy, right? So just so that we have consistent, clear language and it's not ambiguous going forward, I think what we agreed, Ms. Hutchins-Taylor, was that that last clause would be to serve as the non-voting representative on the campus SDMC. So that parallels the clause in the previous sentence, right, as the non-voting representative to the SDMC. So I have a motion to amend the language here on page 2, the final sentence and the final clause of the edits. To change that clause to insert 4 words, so it says to serve as the non-voting representative on the campus SDMC.
Second. There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? There being none, we need to vote on the amendment. Seven for, 0 against, 0 abstentions, 7 people present. Thank you. Motion carries. Now we will go back to the original motion, to the original agenda item so that we can vote on it as amended.
For the amended motion.
Thank you. 7 for, 0 against, and 0 abstention. Motion passes. Now we will move on to D2 has been requested to be voted separately as an abstention. Could I have a motion for D2? So moved. Is there a second?
Okay.
I don't think I have any discussion on it. It's just Ms. Giller-Jones has to abstain from it. Okay. It's D2. Please vote. Yeah, okay. 6 for, 0 against, and 1 abstention. Next item that has been held for abstention is H3. Do I have a motion? H3? Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote. Motion carries 6 for, 0 against, and 1 abstention. We are now ready to consider the balance of today's agenda. Do I have a motion to accept the balance of today's agenda by consensus? Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any comments or questions from my colleagues? If not, please vote. Seven for, 0 against, and 0 abstention. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the agenda review meetings of February 4, 2019, the special meeting of February 4, 2019, the special meeting of February 8, 2019, and the special meeting of February 9, 2019? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Please vote. We're voting on the approval to the agenda review meetings of February 4th. 4-7, 0 against, 0 abstentions. Now we are ready to consider items to discuss in executive sessions. Are there any motions? Dr. Lira?
Yes, I move that the board authorize the district's attorney to settle the matter of Dylan D. Fromm versus Houston Independent School District in the 127th Judicial District, Court of Harris County, cost number 2016-46467 on the terms discussed in closed session, effective February 15, 2019.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote. Motion passes 0 for, 0 against, and 0 abstention. Is there another motion?
Yes. I move that the board authorize the district's attorney to settle the threatened litigation concerning Victoria Owens versus HISD on the terms discussed in closed session, effective February 15, 2019.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, please vote. Seven for, 0 against, and 0 abstentions. Are there any other motions?
Yes. I move that the board authorize the district to settle the subrogation lien of Renee Hutton against Patterson Edward Jack Jr. and Sedgwick Insurance for workers' compensation benefits. Sedgwick Insurance claim number 301791332370001 on the terms discussed in closed session, effective February 15, 2019.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Can you erase that? Okay, please vote. Dr. Lira?
I move that
No, we have to vote
sorry.
again. Ms. Adams has to
gotta vote.
abstain. 6 for, 0 against, and one abstention. Any other motions, Dr. Lira?
Yes. I move that the board approve a finding of no good cause for educators to resign or abandon employment contracts without district consent under Section 21.105C, 21.16C, or 21.210C of the Texas Education Code as discussed in closed session, and authorize the interim superintendent or her designee to submit a written complaint to SBEC to impose sanctions effective February 15, 2019.
There's been a motion and a second. Please vote. Six, 4, 0 against, and 1 abstention. Any other motions?
I move that the board approve the balance of the closed session personnel agenda, including specifically that the board approve proposed termination of performance, continuing term, and probationary contracts, and authorize the interim superintendent or her designee to provide notice of same, and that the board approve separation and release agreements as discussed in closed session effective February 15, 2019.
There's been a motion and a second. Please vote. 6, 4, 0 against, and 1 abstention. Any other motions?
I move that the board approve the sale of surplus property at 4435 Weaver Road, Houston, Texas, 77016, and grant authority to the district to negotiate and execute all related documents on the terms discussed in closed session effective February 15, 2019.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Please vote. You would have to talk. 6, 4, 0 against, and 1 abstention.
I move that the board approve the sale of surplus property at 11433 Suburban Drive, Houston, Texas, 77016, and grant authority to the district to negotiate and execute all related documents on the terms discussed in closed session effective February 15, 2019.
Have a motion and a second. Our hearing of citizens is next. I do know we have some students that are here that are going to speak, so just letting you know. So don't leave. I see you standing. There's been a motion and a second. Please vote. And this is our last one, I do believe. Is that correct?
Yeah.
0, 4, 0 against, and 1 abstention. Thank you, Dr. Lita. We will now consider items held for discussion by board members. Our first item to be held for discussion, an agenda item, is B2. May I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, any comments or questions from my colleagues? Ms. Dygard? Or is that?
Since this is why I'm here. So I just have a comment about this.
Oh, hold on. Before you start, we have 3 minutes. Just want to make sure that we have our... Okay, thank you.
We need to ensure that we have the strongest administrative leadership for our students. And first and foremost, to do that, we have got to have the strongest board leadership. I've said this to the board when I was over there years ago, that this board, in any form, no matter who is sitting here, needs to be working towards building stronger bridges across the racial divides and not digging deeper chasms. I have found the reports from the surveys problematic. I find the conversations around this search problematic, and I'm going to go so far as to say that if the 9 of us cannot get our act together, that our students deserve different board members, as one of the members of the public suggested. So we all need to figure this out and not continue to be divisive on this subject, to ensure that we have absolutely the best person. And it may be the person that's already sitting here, or it may be somebody else, but absolutely the best person here for our students.
Anyone else have comments, questions? I don't see anybody else in the queue. for B2. Ms. Skiller-Jones?
I want to add one more thing. I'm not going to be part of this divide anymore.
Thank you. Ms. Skiller-Jones?
This district is facing several very precarious situations. The dysfunction of this board, a pending investigation of this board, a probable state takeover from 1842, decreasing revenues and increasing recapture. As presented in the data earlier that Carla gave us, our student achievement is increasing despite those challenges. So this district, those people that you see out there and in those classrooms and in those schools are doing that work that we saw here despite the dysfunction of this board. Research shows that disruption in leadership has an impact on student achievement. I see no reason to add to the list of precarious positions by continuing this search and adding more disruption at the top. Why are we attempting to fix something that's not broken? It simply defies logic. With all that we are facing, why add this to our plates? We need to tackle our budget, allow our current leadership to fix our 1842 schools, get them out of IR, and quite frankly, we should be focused on getting our act together. I cannot imagine that a highly qualified candidate who is rational and sane would come here in the face of uncertainty that they may not have a job soon. They'll come here with a divisive board and a critical funding issue, and knowing in 2 to 3 months or sooner they could be gone. I submit to you that that would not be a candidate that our children in this city deserve. Anything less than a stellar candidate is not worthy of our children. In addition, we do not have time or room for a learning curve. It's unnecessary, and to subject our students, our faculty, and staff to that is unfair. It took our last superintendent 8 to 9 months to listen and learn. We don't have 1 month, let alone 8 to 9. And I doubt that this board can successfully even onboard a superintendent. We can't do that until we fix ourselves. This district is on a positive trajectory. Why would we derail that with the distraction of disrupting our leadership at the top? That is, if we are concerned about achievement, and this isn't about anything else. If the findings of this investigation of this Open Meeting Act reveals that there were violations when trying to attempt to bring a superintendent, why would we then allow that to happen under this search? We need to find out if there have been Open Meetings Act violations. If that is clear, then we are more than confident that we could go forward with the search, and I would be comfortable that my colleagues would be conducting a fair search. If the investigation reveals that there were violations, why would people who have violated be trusted to do a search? Our public, I'm sure, would agree with that. There is nothing wrong with suspending the search. We're not ending it. There is nothing wrong with waiting to ensure that this board can be trusted to do the right thing. Thank you.
I see no one else in the queue, so please vote. Ms. Santos.
Today marks the 329th day since this board first committed to a search for a permanent superintendent. Since then, we have voted 6 times to move the search process forward. On September 20th, 2018, the board voted 6-3 to engage a firm to begin a nationwide search. In a second vote, the board rejected a proposal to delay the search for 1 year. On October 11th, 2018, the board voted 6-3 to approve a contract with the search firm. On October 18th, 2018, the board passed by unanimous consent a motion to set an end date for the search. On December 13th, 2018, the board voted 6-3 to continue with the planned confidential search process. On January 17th, 2019, the board voted 5-3 to ensure that the expenses of properly engaging the community would be paid, allowing the search process to move forward without delay. As the facts clearly show, the motion on the table to indefinitely postpone the superintendent search is a matter that has been asked and answered 6 times. It has been the unwavering will of this board to conduct this search. I am voting against this motion because my constituents have overwhelmingly made it clear that they want our district to go out and conduct a proper and responsible search to find the most qualified candidates to lead this district. They want the best superintendent out there. So do I. Madam President, I move to call the question.
there's a motion to call the question.
What's Robert Rules of Order? You can't use that motion to call the question to prevent people who want to speak from speaking at least once.
Okay. So we cannot call the question unless everyone is allowed to speak once. So next we have Ms. Adams, followed by Ms. Jones.
Thank you so much, Madam President. Before I ever speak, if people have been following me for the last 13 years, I've always been a person of character, a person of transparency, a person who have led with integrity. And I'm always a person to always say that my actions was something that I was not proud about, but to go move forward. I tell everyone, when you commit an offense and the innocent person didn't know anything about it, and then you be pulled in for investigation, can possibly be charged for a walking quorum, can be up to 6 months in jail, up to a $500 fine. I want to know who in this room who would not be mad if you didn't know anything about it, if you get caught off guard. So the reason that I am supporting this particular item is because at this particular time, before all those meetings that occurred that was mentioned earlier, TA did not come to investigate us for a walking quorum. A walking quorum is against the law. It is a violation. Can't do it. So this trustee was caught off guard with that. To know that my character has been questioned, yes, I was upset about it. Because now we're all being investigated of an action of several board members. So the same board members that are asking not to support this item are the same one that will pull your next superintendent. So, led up to this particular vote that night was a walking quorum to hire Dr. Saavedra. This trustee didn't know anything about that. That's the same board members that y'all are asking to go through this search. Is that open and transparency? Is that fair? No. This motion is not to cancel the search. This motion is to suspend the search until the investigation of TEA is completed. Now, if you know that a job was under investigation or going to be closed, you would not come and work for that job, knowing that you're not going to have your job tomorrow. We will not get the best candidates at this particular time. So that's why I'm asking this board. Many of us stand with strong faith morals. We're always talking about a God that we love and a Christ that we serve. If we're going to do the right thing, we have to suspend the search, because trust me, whenever someone come after you for an investigation, they're not coming after just for accusations. They're coming because they even have documented proof on that the rules are violated. And so this particular trustee, no, I'm not proud of my actions. But when you pull me into something illegal that can just question my character, that can possibly cause any type of criminal offense against this trustee, yes, I'm going to defend myself. So on that, I'm asking this board, if you have any heart at all, any faith, or anything like that, I'm asking you to support this item, just temporarily suspend it until TEA have come down with their investigation and to see what their findings will be. It can be no violations, we move forward, or it can be violations because we have proof. No one will come here. We won't even be here. So I'm asking you to please support this item.
Ms. Yolanda Jones.
I put this item on the agenda because my community overwhelmingly asked me what we were doing by having a superintendent search. I feel extremely uncomfortable about the search. I was told I could have 2 meetings, found out one of my colleagues had 5 and one of them was hidden. I don't believe in the integrity of it. I also had the 2 meetings, even though some people had 5. And what was said about the community meetings that I had at Sterling and at Peck was not accurate. Although I did not know that the principals were meeting with the superintendent search firm, I heard very many concerns from principals who said they were concerned about the search, and based on what I reviewed about the search, not including any names from the search firm, it's not accurate about what the principal said because they were overwhelmingly in support of Dr. Layton. But that's not in there either. But apart from that, I don't trust that certain of my colleagues on this board are deliberating on HISD business at the HISD board meetings where we can all participate in it, whether we agree with each other or not. I'm not apologizing for anything. truth is an absolute defense to libel, slander, and defamation. And let me be clear for everybody out there, I can't speak for my colleagues. I'm speaking to my constituents. I'm not apologizing for anything. I am going to fight tooth and nail for what I believe to be best for HISD and our students, and I believe Dr. Layton is the best. So anybody who comes here to try to take Dr. Layton's place, I'm voting against you. I'm telling you here, I'm telling you now. Nobody can say I'm racist. I supported Lena Hidalgo. In fact, I was the only elected official that supported Lena Hidalgo. Last I looked, she was Latino. Y también habló español. And a whole bunch of other stuff. So I'm not going to have people try to mischaracterize me. And if you have a problem with me, vote me out of office in November. I've never bit my tongue. I am astounded that Superintendent Layton is able to do what she's done with the obstacles placed in her way all day, every day. All day, every day. And the things, and so I'm extremely disappointed that there's a racial divide on this board, because before this year, I voted more with Trustee Davila and Trustee Rodriguez than I did with Trustee Skillen-Jones and Trustee Adams. So Jolanda didn't turn racist because of this. Jolanda is fighting for these kids because it's the right thing to do. And principals overwhelmingly support Dr. Layton. Principals, they're in there day in and day out. And they are afraid of retaliation by my colleagues. But I'm not. I ain't scared. You start some, I'm going to finish it. And I'm voting to suspend it. So vote, I just want to see where we are.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. I will now speak and use my 3 minutes. I'm going to remind my colleagues that when HYA first came to speak to us about the superintendent search, one of the things that I stressed over and over is that meetings that were going to be scheduled and meetings that we wanted scheduled were going to be up to us, not the administration, not anybody outside. It was our responsibility to ensure that if certain civic community leaders, certain civics, any area of town wanted to meet with the search firm, that it was going to be up to us. This was not administration search, this was the trustees search. So we need to be clear about that. I also, one of the people that media chased around as soon as we found out about the TA investigation. And I will say it, what I said then, and what I said, I'll say it again today. I invite TEA, which they have done, to come in and do an investigation, even though we've already been judged by some. I also want to remind the public that in October of 2018, we stood here and we made a commitment to the community that we would move forward and that we would work united. I have stuck to that commitment, regardless of what's being said and printed about me, because I am sticking to that commitment, because that's the commitment I promised to do. I also promised my community that I would do a superintendent search, and that is what I'm following also. So I just want to be clear in the facts that on October 2018, we all made that promise, all 9 of us. And Ms. Jones, 2016, 2017, 2018, I am still the same person. I have not become a racist. And all this time, I'm still the same individual I was, and I'm sure we still agree on a lot of things when it comes to our children. Please vote. For 3, 5 against, and 1 abstention. We are now ready to hear reports and comments from board members. Madam Superintendent, do you have any other reports for us?
No.
Okay, thank you. Starting from my right, moving to my left.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Dr. Lira.
Same here. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Ready to get out of here and go have dinner.
Ms. Sung.
Ditto, and I'm really excited by this board's unanimous decision to become more focused on student outcomes. We're going to have to really dig in and figure out how to make that work, and it's going to be a team of 10 effort. So looking forward to lots more conversations about student outcomes. Thank you.
Trustee Santos?
I echo Trustee Sung's excitement for having conversations centered around student outcomes and just being a more student-driven board. I also want to wish everybody a happy Valentine's Day. I did not imagine my first Valentine's Day as a married couple to be here, but I'm glad that we are, and I just want to say happy Valentine's Day to my husband. Thank you.
Trustee Villaseca Ocampo?
Happy Valentine's Day. Thanks for spending it with us here at Hattie Mae White. Feliz Día de Amor y Amistad, and have a good night. Thank you.
Trustee Adams?
Thank you. I want to just thank all the principals in District 9 for a wonderful Board Member Appreciation Month. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If I knew any other languages besides muchos gracias, I would say them all. You have been amazing, wonderful, tremendous. Thank you for putting in the work. But one thing I do want to say, and I hope my time doesn't go off. President Davila, we're talking about functioning as a board moving forward. You made a comment earlier, said that we stood here as a group and we commanded a relationship of transparency to move forward. I want us to pay very close attention to our conservator's report on the view of the conservator. When you cannot have board members speaking on behalf of the board without board leadership knowing it. Going to Austin, having meetings, having double meetings at the exact same time without everybody knowing it. So that's in this report. So in order for us to be together as a team, we're going to have to do better and be respectful of everything. And in closing, one thing I noticed here today among speakers, and I hope this doesn't carry on forward, the divide was shown today between other races and other races when people came up and spoke today. Today showed the divide. So the question is, how do we fix that as a board? You had Latinos on one side, African Americans on one side, speaking on issues, and everybody sees that. Everyone sees that. So until we get it right as a board, in our honesty, and be honest, remember, again, I'm going to say it again, it's hard to believe something that we say as a board when we have facts to prove different. And as a board member here, especially when I have facts to prove it, it's hard for me to believe that this board is moving in the right direction. When I have facts to prove it. And remember, we have to always be careful what we do, how we do it. Because trust me, someone is always watching. And remember, people are out for us. So I'm just asking y'all to be careful what we do, how we do it. Because trust me, facts are present. And again, like I told somebody else, I'm silent no more. That video came out was the best thing that ever can happen to me. Because I'm free as a bird. So I'm telling you, if I see something that's going on record, I'm saying something. In closed session, if it's something that goes against my beliefs and morals, regardless if it violates the sanction, if it's something that we're doing as a board that's wrong, I'm saying something. So put that on the record. Because I'm saying something. Because I believe if we would have been speaking up a long time ago and not hiding things, we would not be where we are today. So that's my comment. Happy Valentine's, everybody. I hope y'all have a great day. Don't eat too much. Don't eat too much. Don't eat too much. Thank you all so much and have a great day. And may God bless each and every one of you.
That concludes our meeting. We look forward to seeing you at our next regular board meeting, March 21st. With no further business, meeting is adjourned at 8:17.